Hello, welcome back to the Convo Couch, everyone. Pasta Jardula here.
And I'm Fiorella.
And Oz with his overalls and his love and his dandelion tea are on the ones and twos, ladies and gentlemen. How's everybody doing out there in the interwebs land?
What's wrong with dandelion tea? I love dandelion tea. Why are you hating on dandelion tea?
I love dandelion tea. The dandelion tea is amazing. What are you talking about? I love it, but I get some from Oz. That's why I call him in this dandelion tea. I'm actually loving on it. Oh, that's a cool coffee mug. What is that?
Mine?
Espresso today?
It's espresso.
No, it's no sweetener.
No, I don't put sweetener on my things. I'm a real woman, I'm not like you. I don't have to fucking sweeten it up. Oh shit! No, I don't put sweet.
You're supposed to say I'm sweet enough, but instead you use it as an opportunity to go take a low blow to Pasta Jardula. So anyways, everybody, thank you very much for joining on the Rokfin today and on the YouTubes. What's up, Opeth? Good to see you, Lucio. Everybody out there. Lucio, we're going to stay live on both of the channels today. We're going to try to make it all the way through. So we will be on Rokfin and YouTube. If you want to leave a little love, of course, you have to go over to the Rokfin like somebody has already done. Let's share this out there right now, guys. Kristen Nye says they are calling for a worldwide general strike. She left a link to go take a look at it. Hey, listen, Kristen, I don't know if we're ready for a worldwide strike right now, general strike, because the people are split. And even when the opportunity and the blueprint for a general strike, which is something our friend Teodoro said over a couple years ago when he was trying to get wildcat strikes. He said, if you get the truckers, then you have a real strike because they can shut shit down.
He did say that.
He said they can shut shit down. He said, you imagine them parking on the freeways, just stopping, pulling over, boom, all pulling in, and then getting out of their trucks and walking away, shutting shit down. We have the blueprint, fam, but nobody seems to like to go along with the plan because they have their own idea, no?
Man, we're not ready for a general strike because we have to figure out how we're going to seize the House, how we're going to seize the Democratic Party from the corporate Dems. We're going to seize it with Nina Turner and Jason Call and all these progressives running inside. We're going to do it, guys. Just one more time.
Vote harder.
It'll be different this time. I promise.
Vote harder.
I believe that we will win this time.
I believe.
So sorry, your general strike is just, that's ridiculous. What are you talking about? A fucking general strike? No. We got to focus on being realistic here, okay? The only way is through the Democratic Party, damn it.
Because they align with our values, fam, right? Because they align with our values.
Can you imagine if I actually said that, not ironically? Like, if I really meant that? You have the permission to slap me outside of... Like, slap me.
Well, there are people that are saying that today, right? Like, there are people, again, rather than seizing the fucking moment, what's in front of us, it's another mask off situation, plain and simple. And even Chuck agrees because he says, thank you for the super great contribution, fam. It is always appreciated on the couch. Come on, guys. Let's make our head explode today. Let's go.
Don't be violent. That's violence.
Gotcha.
Okay, so let's just get started because we have some guests at the top of the hour. Yep. We got our man Keaton and our man David. So this is really a big deal, guys. We started out pretty light, but this is a huge deal. So Justin Trudeau is imposing the authoritarian, and I would say even fascist, Emergencies Act, okay? And this is a really big deal because it's setting a gigantic precedence. And we got here because a lot of people on the left were cheering it on because they didn't believe in the ideology of the truckers, because they didn't like these people. So the left has been very hypocritical throughout this. So let's hear what he said in response when he was asked about this action.
These financial penalties that are underway for folks who are out there under the Emergencies Act, is this a step too far? Is it too harsh?
This is something that is important for Canadians to know, that there will be consequences for people who are breaking the law and people who are supporting those who are breaking the law. The Emergencies Act is something that is proportional and responsible to move forward with, to indicate that these blockades should be done and people should go home.
Okay, so people were breaking the law by protesting, I guess. There's no legal basis for this, by the way. What he's doing,
the people breaking the law too, fam, is against the thing. So don't say anything to lock it up.
It's already bad enough, but now you're you're going after people for supporting it, for donating to them. We're going to get into that really quickly. Let's hear what this woman has to say, because this woman, I mean, this is full on authoritarianism. Like, this is just, this is scary, but it is where we're headed. This is where we were always headed. So let's listen to what she said.
The government is issuing an order with immediate effect under the Emergencies Act, authorizing Canadian financial institutions to temporarily cease providing financial services where the institution suspects that an account is being used to further the illegal blockades and occupations. This order covers both personal and corporate accounts. Third, we are directing Canadian financial institutions to review their relationships with anyone involved in the illegal blockades and report to the RCMP or CSIS. As of today, a bank or other financial service provider will be able to immediately freeze or suspend an account without a court order. In doing so, they will be protected against civil liability for actions taken in good faith. Federal government institutions will have a new broad authority to share relevant information with banks and other financial service providers to ensure that we can all work together to put a stop to the funding of these illegal blockades.
So essentially, they're seizing people's assets, seizing their bank accounts to stop them from funding or from participating in anything that they deem is terrible, not just the occupation now, anything that is going to undermine the supposed government. Pasta, anything to say before we move on?
Well, I mean, I have a lot to say, so I think we should get through some of it, and towards the end, I'll kind of hold my. I'm just taking notes so I don't stop us. But yeah, there's a lot to unpack here, fam, because I think it's just not just what the government's doing, but we've also talked about the cheerleading from the so-called progressives of sorts, and I don't want to get into the left-right divide all the time, but we talked about that and the consequences that come with this situation. So let's get through this, and then as we get towards the end, we'll have a nice little, powwow about it, about how it's really the effect that this has, not just from the perspective of what the Canadian government's doing, but the perspective of how people are kind of supporting and backing this. So, yeah.
Yeah. So Eva Bartlett put out, anyone in Canada who supports furthers the Freedom Convoy on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, or any other social media platform is a target to have their bank accounts frozen and insurance policies nullified. So this is what she's quoting from this video that goes over the Canada.ca department, right? It's directly exactly what is in this Emergencies Act. And they're using, they were using, I believe, the Terrorist Financing Act to go after also cryptocurrencies, which is a whole other big deal as well. So just this part right here, the government is issuing an order with immediate effect under the Emergencies Act, authorizing Canadian financial institutions to temporarily cease providing financial services where the institution suspects that an account is being used to further any illegal blockades and occupations, both personal and corporate accounts. And they're also directing Canadian financial institutions to review their relationship with anyone involved in the illegal blockades and report to the RCMP or the CSIS. So not only are they targeting people based on suspicion alone, which is completely devoid of any due process, but they are also targeting people who have relationships with those people. This is essentially the worst outcome in terms of what is a police state, what is going to turn people against each other and create more of what we've been seeing here in America after January 6th, in the United States after January 6th, is people outing their family members for being at the Capitol. So it's kind of like that, but on steroids. So let's hear a little bit of the audio from this that kind of surmises that.
Now, think about what happened out in Canada. What did they do? Well, they triggered the Canadian Emergency Measures Act to eliminate protest. This is what they did. And this is going to target individual citizens in Canada and their bank accounts. So they've authorized the banks, financial institutions, and insurance carriers to suspend the accounts of Canadian citizens based on their social media postings. If they don't like what you're saying, the banks can shut down your account. So yes, you read this correctly. Anyone in Canada, individual or business, who supports or furthers the Freedom Convoy or Freedom Protest on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, or any other social media platform is a target to have their bank accounts frozen and insurance policies nullified. But it gets worse than that. Not only are people subject to get their bank accounts frozen, but the decision also to freeze the accounts is entirely up to the reviewer, and the reviewer is protected by the government from civil liability for their decision. So if someone in the bank looks and says, yeah, I don't like the way this person's speaking, I don't like their political view, I don't like the way they're helping or supporting the people who are protesting because they want their freedom back, they're protected and they can just shut you down. So a banking employee who does not like the politics of a customer, as revealed by a review of their social media postings, and merely suspects the account holder of supporting or furthering their actions, can, without any liability, block the bank accounts of any customer or account holder. And they do not need to provide an explanation. This is economic tyranny.
Exactly. I mean, this is insane. This is utter insanity. I don't understand why people aren't like screaming how insane this is. And by the way, they can take away their insurance. So they have healthcare for all. Canada has healthcare for all. Where does fucking having healthcare for all leave you when if somebody doesn't like your opinion or your ideology or where you stand on whatever issue, they can literally come after your assets, take away your healthcare. They can take away pretty much your whole fucking life just because they don't like you. Any of these morons that hate us could literally go and do that if they're serving in some sort of position of power. This is insanity. This is like what a lot of these so-called socialists and leftists want on steroids, because they're under this like demented thought process that doing this is going to weed out all the fascists. That they're just going after fascists and we're just going to go after them. Yay, let's go after the fascists. No, you are a fascist. This is what fascism is. They've warped reality and they propagandize people so much that they've made them believe that becoming little fascist is some sort of virtuous, like, role they have to play. It's utter insanity.
Well, yeah, it begs the question that, like, when a lot of people have this ideology battle, we talk to even people on the right, the conservatives and stuff like that, about, oh, capitalism, it's about freedom and you get to say what you want and do what you want. But what have we been saying the whole time, fam? And the only reason why I always push for that mixed economy is because it doesn't make a difference. You live into a capitalist system, a communist system, and I'm not saying one's better than the other, but a predator class, an elitist class can get a hold of stuff. I know you are, but I'm not. I believe there's good in everything and bad in everything in all these systems. But the whole thing is, at the end of the day, there's a ruling class atop of that system that could, interject straight fucking fascism by way of authoritarianism and control. So, I'm saying, really, to tell you the truth, the eye has to be on the issue that's there. And that is that predator ruling class. That is the issue. That is what we need to handle. And after that, we can get in a room and decide what's best for all of us. But when you have these people out there who are married to their ideology, who are married to, trying to reform one particular side that they feel is closer to their own beliefs, we're just going to continue to be just falling in the mud all the time because we're not handling the real issue out here. You're going to play some stuff that's going to kind of tie it all together. about what Justin Trudeau's ilk is all about and where he comes from. And that should make light bulbs go up and go, oh, he's part of that clan. So it doesn't make a difference, socialism, democratic socialism, capitalism, blah, 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 blah. When there's a ruling class and they can control things and they can censor voices by way of fascism, we're all screwed.
Yeah, we're all screwed, but how did they get there? They got there through empire, through conquering of lands, through conquering massive wealth. And the other part of it is it's not real. The whole point of communism is supposed to be, the goal is supposed to be a stateless society. And this is not that. So what they're doing is they're sort of maligning, they're taking things from the ideology of communism that, okay, you have access to everything, it's easy and blah, 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 but they're putting it in a privatized manner, like the World Economic Forum, which is what we're talking about, the Fourth Industrial Revolution. So these two ideologies have been existing, capitalism, communism, and so I think this is the epitome of capitalism because this is imperialism. But regardless of that, right, if these two ideologies are existing, they've warped communist ideology in these people to make it resemble fascism to the point where the right, and anybody that you go interview that's more leaning on the right, is going to say, this is Trudeau's communism coming in, when it's not. It's actually more authoritarianism and fascism, but it's because these people, these little fascist leftists, are acting out. They're making that reality true. So these two things have existed, and they've warped into a merger of like an actual just dystopian nightmare, because they're using elements of both to create this sort of fake utopia that's not a utopia at all. It is a complete and total nightmare. And that's the problem. That's why it doesn't really get us anywhere when we're talking about, what is communism, because to me, this isn't communism at all, but it's so maligned that we're going to get lost in the debate. Meanwhile, this is still happening. This fascistic authoritarian, like, inception is still happening. So let's listen to what Klaus Schwab says about the World Economic Forum young global leader, Justin Trudeau.
It's Klaus.
Klaus. Yeah.
As you know, Prime Minister, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, friends. As you know, the theme of this annual meeting is mastering the fourth industrial revolution. I couldn't imagine anybody who could represent more the world which will come out of this fourth industrial revolution. It certainly will be a world, hopefully, not certainly, hopefully, if we take the right decisions, which will be a diverse world characterized by plurality. It will be a world which will combine significant investments into the future, into our soft and hard infrastructure, with fostering entrepreneurial activity, at the same time social responsibility. It will be a young world. It will be a digital world. Now, who could represent such a world better than you, Prime Minister? We are very glad that at the beginning of this meeting, you are talking to us to represent also a new, open Canada. I want to use this opportunity also to thank our Canadian constituency, which always has been a very loyal and very much engaged constituency here at the Forum. But now, I think with you, together with our constituents, Prime Minister, we can make sure that in the future we strengthen the cooperation even more with your country. Prime Minister, we are very much looking forward to listen to you, and actually the discussion will be moderated by my friend Farid. So
So who better to usher in the fourth industrial revolution than, I mean, he said it himself in 2016. And by the way, Klaus Schwab resembles a literal like villain from any sort of post-apocalyptic movie you've ever seen. I mean, it's just, this is why I genuinely believe we do live in a cartoon. And Steve, if you're out there, I know you know this, but we really do. Like, and I don't even think it's a cartoon. I think it's a fucking dystopian Black Mirror episode. I'm not as optimistic as you to think it's a fucking cartoon, but like that's where we like reside. And just so out of this, right? A lot of people started figuring this out and saying, this doesn't seem to be about mandates. It doesn't even seem to be about health. It doesn't seem to be about any of that. This seems to be about something else. And so the Canadian truckers said that Trudeau has lost control of the country. And so he is now going into a power grab. They said that the vast majority of the truckers, and this is from Sky News, will remain in downtown Ottawa, say Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau's decision to invoke the Emergency Act to quell their protests is a power grab, and it will not deter them. The truckers and their allies who have dubbed themselves the Freedom Convoy say they will not leave until the federal government rolls back some of the COVID restrictions. And the Emergencies Act was actually passed in 1988 and has never been invoked, but it's going to obviously give not just the government, but the police state more power to limit where people are going to go. And obviously now we know exactly how they're going to do that through freezing their assets. So Pasta, it's obviously, this isn't about health. Like, and in fact, Trudeau didn't even mention the word mandate or anything to do with COVID in the last few days since he gave his speech.
Yeah. Well, at least he's not hiding anymore. We at least get to see him come on with his bullshit mask and then blame the conservatives and really try to frame this as a blockade, which is something I really like. You got to admire from the intelligence apparatus, the way they can kind of like just take certain people and certain teammates and just set them off to go, oh, this is about blockades. Now they're starving people out. And now we're going to blame them for this. We're going to use that kind of as motivation. But I mean, the thing to take with this whole situation is that Klaus Schwab said it right there. This is the fourth industrial revolution. I must kill James Bond and Trudeau will do it. You know, I mean, that's what this is about. That's what some people have been saying, that this isn't really about health. This isn't really about vaccines. This isn't really about other things. This is about the fourth industrial revolution, which is more about more control.
But Trudeau has run into some issues because a lot of the officials in power in a lot of these provinces and these regions and these cities have decided that they're not going to go along with this. So Trudeau is alone, according to many. The 5th Canadian province abandons the vaccine passports amid crackdowns on the freedom convoys. And this was as of yesterday. And this was on Becker News. And they said that his approval rating is collapsing, obviously. And a lot of the actions he's taken have backfired. And so Quebec is the latest province to revolt from the Canadian Prime Minister's vaccine passport policy. And Keen Bizet reported Trudeau is alone. On Monday, Quebec Premier François Legault met with public health officials Monday night to discuss lifting the province's vaccine passport system. And then, of course, the announcement came on Tuesday afternoon. So Quebec, along with Alberta, Saskatchewan, Prince Edward Island, and Ontario are all rejecting the vaccine passports. Now, this doesn't mean that you don't have to worry about it because, again, they're trying to implement these vaccine passports in other forms. And that's the next phase, beyond COVID, beyond these vaccine mandates, it's going to be the passports, the digital IDs. That's what we've been saying for a while. This is where this is going to go. And so I don't think it's over by any means, but you can see the resistance of how people are pushing back against this and forcing their regional governments to really say, no, we're not going to do this right now. That's left to be determined. I think if people stop and they don't push back, yeah, they're going to roll right through with it. But I think if they see that people are really, if people that.
Yeah, Fee. Yeah, it's all right. She'll be back, ladies and gentlemen. It's kind of funny because I was going to say it's crazy the way, and when she gets back, we'll have Fee address this, the way they implemented this stuff so quickly in Canada. It's like they try to just get it in through right away, Trudeau, get it in. And then if it's there, we won't be able to pull back. We won't have to pull back on it because it will be already set in play. In fact, there was a trucker that was going across state lines, country lines, going from the US into Canada. And he talked about this, that when he got there, he's like, no, we already pinged you. We saw that you've gotten your vaccine. Go ahead. And he's like, what do you mean? I haven't even showed you shit yet. But they've already got that system in play. They're tracking where people are moving around. That's what this is all about. And it seems like they tried to implement it quickly and hope that it would stick, but it didn't, because now they're pulling back on it. Fam, go right ahead.
Yeah, no, I was just saying, like, they're pulling back, but I think this is still something these people are going to push, because I think that's the eventual World Economic Forum idea, is that everybody subjugates themselves to this surveillance vaccine passport situation. Moving on that, though, I wanted to reemphasize the gravity of what we're experiencing here. Viva Frei said, don't worry, Justin Trudeau isn't calling in the military. He is just authorizing banks to unilaterally freeze your accounts on the basis of suspicion alone. No court order required with legal immunity. I hope everyone realizes how much more dangerous this is than the military, because this is something that is worth pointing out to a lot of the left. So a lot of the left has imagined revolution being just a military fight, right? Like, oh, we're going to rise up against these fascists and we're going to fight them militarily. We're going to off with their heads. We're going to have all these, this whole situation. The problem is they didn't take into account the surveillance state. And the surveillance state is a foe that is invisible in a lot of ways, and that pretty much empowers the fascists in power. And I'm talking about the governments, the psychopathic predator class that's in power. I'm not talking about the people you disagree with ideologically that voted for Donald Trump or that support a right-wing government in Canada or wherever else. I'm talking about the actual people with power, because the left doesn't fucking understand power. They have no idea about power. And that is far more dangerous, because as Robert F. Kennedy Jr. did say in his speech, you can't hide from that. You cannot hide from these people coming in and seizing your bank assets or freezing them and taking down your insurance. You can't hide from that. You can hide from a soldier coming in, but you can't hide from the surveillance state, because it's this part of this technocratic, just gigantic monster that we've created as a society due to the advances in big tech and, of course, the advances in power by the surveillance state. So that's something that I think on the left, they don't think about that.
Yep. And I got to think about other people who kind of said that they always wanted to stand behind the system, seeing how it can be manipulated in this way, right? Like, when the person who has the keys to the car takes the car out for a drive, in this case being Justin Trudeau, saying, let's see what we can do over here. You know what I'm saying? Let's test the waters and kind of seize money. I mean, it's got to be fucking scary, because it's like I told my mom always used to say, prepare for a rainy day. God forbid something happens. Well, at the Convo Couch, we didn't prepare for fascism. We didn't prepare for censorship, because it's something you never think would come to here in the West, who used to always say, oh, it's about our freedoms. We're allowed to say these things. We're allowed to support the things we want. No, right now, it seems to be like this kind of moment in time, this moment in history where the shit is hit the top of the hill and it's about to slide all the way down right now. And it's very scary to see what's in the future right now. You know what I'm saying? And I love this next tweet you have over here, because this is so true. Can you just imagine?
Yeah. I mean, because the United States and Canada, that always backs the United States. I mean, they're our closest ally. They're our neighbor. There's so many people that live here and there. So, it's pretty much like an extension almost in some aspects. Imagine if Putin right? And Maduro and Assad and Xi Jinping forced banks to freeze people's accounts on a whim because they say they supported, they supported something that was anti-government without any legal protocols, without impunity. How long would it take for the United States to say, oh, we have to go back in there, and not just the United States, but their NATO allies, which include Canada, how long would they allow before they would say, we got to go in there and restore democracy and stop the human rights abuses and the human rights violations? Let's just put that into perspective, because what's happening in Canada is such a big deal, but you don't have the mainstream media really talking about it the way we're talking about it. You have them talking about it as, well, Trudeau is restoring order to Canada because of these fascist protesters, blah, 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 ties. And you still have a bunch of the fucking idiotic left talking about the right-wing connections to these, like right now, in the middle of this happening, they're still talking about that. Now, if that pissed me off, that they were talking about it in the beginning, like they were framing this a certain way, that it wasn't, because it wasn't a monolithic protest. I mean, or none of these are, right? None of them, no protest movement that I have seen has ever been monolithic, okay? And so, I defended Black Lives Matter, saying, yes, there's a lot of co-option going on, but it's not monolithic. There are people there who are really actually trying to do something to call attention to what's happening. But no, now they turn around and they continue to push and harp on the fact that this is a right-wing, blah, 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 in the midst of this happening. So just imagine, and a lot of these people, they know about imperialism. Why don't you recognize how imperialistic this is? Just because it's a country doing it to its own people doesn't make it any less of something that's not part of the empire. This is the empire doing what empire does, but to its own people.
Yeah. And a lot of people still talking this guff are they're never going to rebound from this right over here, because, when the chips were down and when it took a lot of guts to speak the truth, you decided to sit there and still continue to play team sports. People are not going to trust you because of it. And you're, what I'm saying, a lot of these people, they haven't even gone out to a lot of these protests that we've gone out to and speak to these people and see what's going on. I mean, we have a different perspective, fam, because we actually go there and speak to people, even when it's people that think differently than us. There's footage of the Convo Couch going into a freedom rally, talking to people who think very differently than us, disagree with them on a lot of things, but you go and you get a sense for what they're standing for, what they're all about. You know what I'm saying? And you talk to them. And like you said, it's never monolithic, right? It's never like, okay. And what is really, if we sat here and we did a test and we took 100 people and we gave them 20 questions, let's say 25 questions on all the issues, are we going to ever have two people that match up almost identical on everything? Probably not. Probably not. So no matter what, I mean, we have to have the ability to have we have to be comfortable with uncomfortable conversations. I used to say that a lot. I'm going to say it again. But even though people think differently than us on certain issues, when it's time to stand up for actual freedom, you know what I'm saying? For actual fucking pro-labor, then we have to do it, despite what what some of those people, their core ideology might be. And yeah, I feel bad for those people because they're never going to rebound from it, fam.
And just to push more of this hypocrisy in, right? I mean, by the way, Defiant L was an account that was really popular and they were taken off of Twitter, which is, again, just this constant censorship, this constant just taking of accounts down for pretty much saying the truth. And here's Justin Trudeau 10 years ago. So this is the 10-year challenge that everybody's doing with their selfies, but really a selfie of Trudeau's words. He said in 2012, when a government starts trying to cancel dissent or avoid dissent is when it's rapidly losing its moral authority to govern. Harper in 2005. So he was quoting, right? And then flash forward to this today, this February 2020. I want to be very clear about what we are and are not doing by invoking the Emergencies Act and how taking this step will help get the situation under control. In case you missed our announcement earlier today, watch this. And of course, he starts talking about how the Emergencies Act will be used to strengthen and support law enforcement agencies, as if law enforcement agencies need strength and support. I mean, and not to mention the fact that Canada's law enforcement agencies don't even compare to ours. But I mean, the United States, of course, now has a precedent taken by another country very close to its own that it can use on, and it's already taking those actions per the latest terrorist bulletin that we went over last week, right? And so what we're seeing here is yet another liberal hypocrisy that often happens with these people, where they don't admit it. They don't say they've changed. They don't say I believe this is a different. No, they were never there. They were trying to get people to come on their side, and then as soon as they seize power, they turn their back, which is what always happens with neoliberals. Because scratch a liberal, and what do you get? You get a fascist. And so, my issue with the left, with a lot of, and I say left, and people get mad that I say left, but it is the U.S. left. It is the American left, because the vast majority of the narrative on the left is dominated by these people. It's dominated by, not dominated by us. We're being called fringe. We're being called the alt left. We're being called whatever, fascist, Nazis, whatever. Like, so it's not, we're like, even if we are the quote real left, we're not a large representation of it in North America. What is the left, as people know the left to be, is the vast majority of these little fascists that have been cheering us on. And Kyle Kulinski wrote a tweet that pissed me off, because he has been extremely like either silent or cheering on of the mandate situation, but specifically jumping into the whole, oh, these protests are right wing and blah 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 bullshit. And I think that's complicity, because this is what allowed us to get here, to get into this situation. And he said, Canada trying to freeze the bank accounts of trucker protesters with zero due process and oversight. Calling them terrorists is a precedent that will be used against any and all protests. Well, no shit. This is what we've been talking about. This is why you don't call people who disagree with you alt-right or Nazis or any of this stuff. This is why you don't stay silent when a bunch of journalists are talking about, hey, maybe these vaccine mandates are a little bit authoritarian. This is why somebody that's an influencer shouldn't stay silent on that. And he's saying you have to oppose it regardless of what you think of the substance of the protest. And that's the issue. Yes, you have to oppose it regardless of what you think of the substance of the protest, but there's nothing wrong with the substance of the fucking protest. The substance of the protest is literally fighting against this very thing, because the whole point of mandates is what? They're removing a person's choice to have bodily autonomy. And so why does that matter to so many people? Well, because if the government's going to tell me what I put in my body, then that's a step over. So I'm going to stop it before it gets to the next step. And guess what happened? That's exactly what the government did. They went over to the next step. And so if you're not supporting the people's right to have a say in what they get due to these vaccines that have come under so much scrutiny, and like, then what do you like, this falls on deaf ears. And I feel like this happens all the time. These people are Johnny come latelys, and you don't get a fucking cookie every time you come in and state the obvious that a lot of people have been stating forever, just to protect your brand. Now you're shifting because you see, oh shit, this is really bad actually. And if I don't say something now, I'm going to look like a prick and I'm going to lose credibility. Well, no, you've already lost credibility, because it's no longer enough for you to only shift when you're just trying to save your ass. This because these people have so much influence that they allow this narrative to continue, and you don't longer get any sort of accolade from me, but you shouldn't get accolades from people for basically stating something that should have been stated long before. And I'm going to read Max's take, Pasta, before I hand it over to you. He said, these takes remind me of the left Syria regime changers who spent day and night smearing proponents of the CIA's dirty war, but claimed to oppose direct U.S. military intervention as soon as the bombs started to fall on Damascus. Vaccine mandates are the basis of the biosecurity regime. And if you began okaying vaccine mandates and the biosecurity of the regime, like, then it's going to get worse from there. So you're manufacturing consent, in essence, for this to continue. It's just like what it is with imperialism. And he says, if you're a left influencer who repeatedly mocked and belittled those who oppose mandating a non-sterilizing, and this is his quote, COVID vaccine, you bear responsibility for suppressing left dissent against imperial technocrats now imposing emergency law to crush those protesting the mandates. So again, this is I 100% agree. I'm with him on that, especially because we got a ton of shit for saying this shit from the beginning.
Yeah.
And so somebody, Johnny Come Lately, comes in and he's like, oh, this is bad. Oh, Kyle, see, he gets it now. No, he doesn't fucking get it. He's shifting his stance because he sees his brand is in jeopardy. And you guys have to start recognizing those people.
Ow. Yeah, I think the argument would be that they can say that they're being nuanced about the situation, that they say like, okay, this is a public health issue and we need to get this done to get to herd immunity. We have to protect ourselves because the science says that this is necessary. But then they get to a point, well, okay, you know, we feel that way, but you could be nuanced about it and say, well, seizing bank accounts now is going too far. I mean, that's going to be their argument, as opposed to where you and Max are kind of saying, no, 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 you don't get to be Johnny Come Lately, come in the room, get that cookie, because you in actuality helped create the environment for us to get to this process, to get to this point. In other words, if you had stood up and say, wait, mandates aren't good no matter what across the board, because it should be something that's very obvious, we wouldn't be here right now, to a point where the elites or the ruling class felt enough justification from you people over here that they can get to a point where they can start seizing bank accounts, right? And you're looking at it as like, you're not fooling us. Now you want to talk. Now you want to come in the room. Now you want to stand up for civil liberties. Now you want to stand up for freedom. In the beginning, you were chastising all of us where we were saying, hey, man, it's going to get to this point, right? The Johnny Come fucking Latelys, when we've been saying for years, yo, vaccine passports are coming if we keep on fucking going down this fucking road. We need to stop it right here. Am I correct when I'm did I analyze that properly?
Yeah, and it's not only, and you did, and it's not only that, it's the fact that by not allowing the protesting to stand on its own, you're still allowing that manufacturing of consent to be, well, if I don't like what they're protesting for, then I'm going to allow some sort of authoritarian overreach. This is due to the compliance of a great portion of the left, because I've seen more of the right speak out against it for better or worse. But it's not like they don't have their own fucking blind spots, because they do, and they're terrible when it comes to Trump and when it comes to a lot of these, these theories that are absolutely wrong. But like, it's the reality that the left is like so just focused on their ideology that they're still cheering for this, and we're going to go over what those people are cheering for. But This is just what I said to reiterate this point. I said, Kyle, like many influencers, leftists spent this entire time shitting on those against the mandates and the COVID narrative. But now that it's painstakingly obvious how bad this is, comes right before dawn with an obvious take. This authoritarian disaster is a result of the left's compliance, because the left was saying these are a bunch of right-wing fascist Nazis. And look at all these tweets from these so-called, leftist journalists that I support. Look, they're right. Look, they're showing the money lines. There were no money lines shown. There were just a few people that were right-wing, or that somebody had said some racist things and they happened to be there. That does not tie into the whole protest being this fascist alt-right thing, but they're still doing it and they're still going to do it. And these people played into it and they were like super silent on it, or they didn't support it. And by doing that, you're allowing this to continue. You're allowing that to become a reality. And furthermore, if on your show, if you have a show like Kyle does, or multiple shows, and you're not talking about vaccine mandates, you're not talking about the fourth industrial revolution, you're not talking about what's really behind the COVID narrative, then you're not only doing a disservice to your audience, you like what you haven't been talking about that, and now you come in and you pretend that this is something you care about. No, this is just you shifting your brand, so protecting your brand, so you can continue pretending that you're some sort of progressive, and so you can have this. Well, I'm going to stand against that. Now that I see the bombs coming on these people, because this is a gigantic fucking bomb that's being dropped. Now I'm going to say something. Well, it's a little too late. And normally I'm like, yeah, well, I'm glad people joined us, even if they're late. But this isn't that. They're not rectifying their ways. They're not saying I was wrong, I should have supported this. No, like, oh, this is just wrong. But I'm not going to say anything about that. I'm going to say, regardless of how you feel about the protests.
Yeah, I also think that it's
yeah.
the tactics too, fam. I just want to say real quick, it's just the tactics that were used in the get-go. Like, yeah, it is a little bit like now you're coming in Johnny Gun lately, yet when, you know, and it's almost like what we saw in Syria, right? Like the whole, Assad is a brutal dictator, but no, you dismiss so much stuff in between that, like, and then have nuanced conversations in early debate. Instead, you just dismiss people on that stance because you want to wear the cloak of virtuosity. And now it's so late that now you want to come in the door. So I really think that that no matter what, moving forward, for some of those people who maybe been fence sitters versus people who immediately use the tactic of cancel culture and saying those people are stupid so quickly, the solution is early debate. Early debate from the get-go so we understand of all sides, so we don't get to a point where our jumping off is like, well, yeah, this is bad now. No shit, it's bad. We said everything leading up to this was bad, and now we're here talking about this when we should be talking. We're talking about A, B. We're not talking about A, B, C, or D. We're talking about E because we refuse to talk about A, B, C, and D. So I hear you. I get you. And I got to agree with you on most situations. There are some people who've now said some stuff like I talked about. I'm like, well, I'm glad she's there now. You know what I'm saying? Different than some other people and the tactics they used early on and why we ended up in this jumping off spot. Sorry, fam. Go ahead.
No, I mean, you're right. I mean, I think there's a difference between people admitting like that they were wrong and people just sort of like snakily just saying, oh, this is bad without taking any accountability. But it gets worse because there are people that are cheering this on, right? Full on cheering this on. And this is Lee Carter. He served as a representative for the Virginia State House. He was a progressive that a lot of people supported. I thought he was cool early on. That ended a while ago based on a lot of his stances, particularly the Trump derangement syndrome that started. But he said, one of history's biggest lessons for the left, the capitalist state doesn't suppress fascists often. So when it happens, fucking let it happen. Don't jump in on the side of the fascists. That first Hitler, then Archer shit has never worked. And then on the second tweet, he later says, enjoy the break. Enjoy that it's on them and not on you. What are you talking about? You know, this is the most idiotic, moronic tweet I think I've seen in a long time. Fucking let it happen. Don't jump in on the side of the fascists. He's jumping in on the side of the fascists. You know, he's labeling thousands of people, by the way, as all fascists.
Yeah.
And so not only that, but now he's saying, don't jump in on the side of the fascists, but let it happen. No. So what are the people that are in power that are imposing these authoritarian, not just mandates, but now government overreach through the Emergencies Act? What are they not fascist and authoritarian? They have far more power than the people you're calling a bunch of Nazis and a bunch of fascists. So where do you get this? Like, it's just like complete and total devoid of any sort of logic here, because the people in power are imposing these restrictions, imposing these draconian measures are the ones that are fascist, and you're siding with them, Lee. You're siding with them. And of course, when I said something to him, he completely blocked me. and
the mentality, that tribe's mentality right there. And I'm saying the tribe, because they all act this way, fam. Go ahead.
No, I was just saying he completely blocked me, right? When I pretty much went out, I said, you know, you're supporting fascists. I basically said, you know, you're the one that's coming on here and doing this. And to me, it's just reminiscent of where the left is at, Pasta. I mean, I think a large majority of the left is here. Like, this is where they're at. They're at the point where they're cheering. They're so blinded by this sort of ideology, like this faith to their ideology that isn't even a valid existence of what the ideology was supposed to represent anyway. Yeah. Like, they're maligning it to the point where nobody's going to want to join their side. Like, well, who's going to join your fucking revolution when you're acting like a little fascist? You're acting like a cop. You're like, I thought all cops are bastards, right? And it's not And they're not. I mean, according to these people, right? This is,
Yeah.
it's just lunacy.
Well, fam, what we'll do is we're going to hold on to the chief stuff. We have 2 more slides and then we'll bring our guest on in and we'll talk a little bit more about what's going on there. So Oz, we'll table the chief stuff until after, since we ran a little bit long on this subject. There's something I just put up too, fam, as well. I kind of added in my quick tweet. I said, a country so free that Big Brother can come in at any time and freeze your financial assets, including crypto. I don't know how they're going to do it about Bitcoin. I'm going to wonder how they're going to get around that. I just want to plug that little thing real quick. This is the first test, and I want to point this out there because this is the first test of the global leaders to see how strong their grip is post-COVID, right? About when it comes to finances, what can they do? How can they shut shit down? If you have a big protest with trucks in the streets, how do you stop this? But it's also a test for we, the people, to see how we get around these measures, how we fight back, and how we take control, aside from those people who want to believe that this is just a whole right-wing funded nationalist fucking movement and stuff like that. But I believe you have some footage, fam, of some of these nationalists, no?
Me?
Yeah, didn't you put some footage of the nationalist in there?
Oh yeah, let's just play this video to show you all these right-wing racist Nazis, and then we'll go on to our guest that's here.
Exactly. There you go.
From where in Alberta?
Begunny First Nation in southern Alberta, near Lethbridge area.
Why are you here?
To help spread the message to people back home about what's actually really going on here and how it affects them.
Vous venez d'où? Québec, la chute. La chute? Yeah, it should be a bel terrain de golf à la chute.
Oh, yes. Give me a kiss.
Oh, mwah, mwah, nice.
My grandma loves
I haven't kissed anybody. Well, other than my wife.
Surfers could do. I bet they could get water to all those First Nations communities that they fail to do. We want the water. That's another house. We want the water that was promised all those years ago.
Viva la Frei, fam. I love Viva Frei. I subscribe to him.
Yeah, so I mean, there's so many videos he put up to kind of dispel the narrative, but that's just one that was quick that I chose. But you can go through his Twitter feed, you can go through his YouTube videos and see what the media was saying is completely false. But people don't do that. They'll go and say, oh, he's not a leftist, so we might as well throw him out, like, just because he's not a leftist. There's a lot of things I don't agree with Viva Frei, by the way, on, but he was there. And,
I know, but the thing about it is Viva Frei is one of those great examples of a guy who you're not going to agree with, but you can see he's a beautiful, wholehearted guy. He's always been looked upon that way. And when he goes out to the streets, the way he talks to people and everything like that, that's the way to kind of look, I think, through a lens where people always have this image of like, oh, you know, they've been told that this is the way a right-winger is, and they're awful and racist kind of people and stuff like that, where you can see a guy as lovable as that who you can disagree with at times, but still realize that we're just humans on this planet under control of the ruling class that is trying to shape the narrative the way they want to, so therefore that they can hold on to all the power and the resources.
100%, fam. So we have some guests here, fam.
Yes, I'm going to read the super rays really, really quick, and we're going to bring them on. Oz, if you can have Keaton's video ready, because the Convo Couch knows personally the last 2 journalists, reporters, activists to go and confront Sandy. We spent time and we've broken bread with these people. Franco, when he did it on the steps of the Capitol, where Anders Lee went after him and now this another man crazy with the cowboy hat. We'll get to him in a second. Kristen Nye says the truckers are calling for it. I should have added that part. We got you, Kristen Nye. We showed for it. The general strike. If we don't get it, shut it down. Shadowban Refugee, thank you so much, Shadowban Refugee. Happy anniversary. Pasta's new beard is always appreciated, fam. Alex McKay said it on the stream. All great men have beards. I have spoken. He is right. Alexander's right. Shadowban is right. I am right. Massimiliano Urbani, sup from Melbourne, Australia. Love you guys. Keep it up, fams. Thank you so much in Australia. You guys are on deck too as well. You had a big protest rally the other day. I'm so fucking proud of you people out there. Keep it up. And Tony watches closely, old friend of the show. We love you, Tonio. Fourth IR Fourth Reich, in my opinion. That is true. So we have some fams over here, and they are fams. We know these people personally. Just the other day, a video caught fire of some magic of some mysterious man in a cowboy hat. Somebody said it was the Cookie Monster, the cowboy Cookie Monster, but it's not. It's our good friend. Let's take a look at the fire he dropped at a DSA rally in Texas.
About that a little bit too, because
You refuse to fight tooth and nail against the Iron Dome funding. You refuse to stand.
Well, let's talk about it.
You're a traitor.
Let's talk about
to
it.
the people of the world.
Let's talk about it. Because let's actually start on that note, right? Because I don't believe in elephants in the room.
Yeah, me either.
Let's speak on it, because we are all here in solidarity to fight for human rights for Palestinians and Palestinian kids. So if we care about this, my brother, if we care about it, we gotta be about it.
Yeah.
We gotta be about it. And when the votes happen,
$1 billion.
they have to.
You refuse to face the crowd. You refuse to do anything of value. You're a traitor to the people. I loved it all. You even threw in the Ortega stuff because that shit got me so pissed off. And we also have one of your comrades here today. We know both these guys very well. Keaton Mansfield, David from, is it UPI?
CPI.
CPI. See, I fucking got it. Where's my notes? CPI. These guys are both from CPI. What does it stand for before I butcher it, David? Let people know.
This says Center for Political Innovation.
That is right. And we got a lot of questions about that. But first, let's unpack this thing. Keaton, my man, I've sat down with you and broke bread in Nicaragua. We had such a great time. We had some amazing conversations. Really, to tell you the truth, it was kind of eye-opening. It was life-changing for some of us, especially that conversation we had after hours with a bunch of friends, just getting your perspective. But let's unpack what happened here with Sandy, your good friend. What was going through your mind? Did you know you were going to do this? Did you prepare yourself for it? Or is this just something that happened like inspirationally? Because I saw you going yes with Sandy when she says, hey, brother, we got to be about it. And you were connected there. But then she's trying to throw the same bullshit out there and you once again whacked it down. Unpack what happened over the weekend with this situation.
Absolutely. It's good to see both of you again, Post and Fiorella. Yeah, it was absolutely planned. I was preparing for it. As a matter of fact, I had been in Illinois all of last week, and I wasn't supposed to get back to Austin until yesterday, until Monday, and the event with AOC that I was at was on Sunday. So when I got the notification on my phone that she was going to be in Austin on Sunday, I'm like, all right, I'm cutting the vacations short, packing all my stuff up and making that 13-hour drive back down to Austin so I can be there and I can be there to confront her. And we get in there and really, I mean, you can see that in the video. There really weren't a lot of people, maybe 150, 200 people probably. So, I mean, if anything, I mean, she's supposed to be the progressive queen who can just pull thousands and thousands of crowds. But they, you know, she's promising Texas is going to go blue. Texas is going to stay red until that red represents socialism.
Wow.
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 I'm a little bit like, okay, so a lot of people give you and Caleb hate and the entire CPI organization because there's a lot of conservatives and a lot of conservative social issues that you guys, you know, you accept from other people. Not that the whole organization is, but that you accept, like spirituality, religion, and just certain stances on things. How do you conflate, or how do you bring socialism into a sort of conservative viewpoint on social issues as well?
Well, I think for me at least, and see, this is the thing that strikes me as so odd. I have known Caleb in person for every bit of 6 months. I was with him in New York. I mean, we were eating lunch together every day. That man is socially progressive. He is very much, I mean, all these things that they levy against him, that he's, you know, whatever, he's homophobic, he's transphobic, he's against abortion. They levy at Caleb, it makes no sense. Caleb's progressive. if anybody, I mean, I'm the one who, no mind you, I wouldn't consider myself a traditionalist or conservative, but I'm definitely not as much on the social issues in general. So when the question comes up of, okay, how do we reconcile maybe more conservative social values with socialism, strikes me as really odd, because internationally, the question is, how do we reconcile progressivism and liberal social values with socialism? Because China is not a socially liberal country. Cuba is not. Nicaragua definitely is not. It has some of the most strong pro-life legislation in Latin America. So, I mean, if anything, these around the world, these more conservative social values, cultural values are pretty much accepted in the norm when it comes to socialism.
Yeah. Wow. Basta.
I was going to jump in and ask David a question. I'm sorry, my mic.
Oh yeah, go. No, go ahead.
So David, I just want to piggyback on what Keaton's saying right now, because like I said, it was like kind of like when you go to the global south and when you're in Nicaragua and you see the type of socialism that's there, right? The economic socialism, and you can see the people are pretty much like almost like Trumpers that speak Spanish, right? They're very highly religious. They go to church on Sundays. They're not really going to push hard for gay marriage. They're not approving of abortion. Shit, they even suck when it comes to marijuana and whatnot. What would you consider CPI to be? And how would you then sell that brand if it is or if it is not socialism to Americans who look at socialism as, wait, this is way too much authoritarian control. This is taking away our freedoms. Go ahead and piggyback on that.
Yeah, definitely. And to riff off of what Keaton was saying just a second ago, him and I don't agree personally on like social issues, but we're here to work together under the CPI banner to get those issues resolved, because we really feel like class and economic issues, like you're saying, how you saw in Nicaragua, it wasn't social progressivism, but it was socialism economically. And to get those two mergers here, especially in Texas, is something I've been trying to do for the past year. And let me tell you, there's a lot of people here who love the idea of socialism, but they don't even know what it is. They're socialists, but they don't know it yet. They practice this thing. It's called down here, they call it Southern hospitality. But what I like to call it is yolidarity. It's what it really is when it comes down to the day. Your neighbors, helping out neighbors because they see the state isn't going to come in and help me. God knows these private corporations aren't going to come and help me. Why are we going to bicker about these social issues when we can hold people's feet to the fire and get actual real material changes? So even though I am on the social progressive lens and there is a lot of people socially conservative in the CPI, I'm not focused on that. I'm focused on getting real material changes for people where it really matters. And I respect everybody's spiritual beliefs, everybody's social beliefs. It's really a matter of talking about material conditions and getting out of the culture war, in my opinion.
It's funny you mentioned that about Texas, because having grown up in Florida, having lived in the Midwest, I 100% agree with you. And when I went to Iowa to cover Bernie Sanders, there were these very conservative people there that were just talking and gloating about co-ops, but they didn't call them co-ops. They called them something else. And I'm like, oh, this is a very socialist thing you guys are promoting, but I'm not going to tell you that. And it's this thing that they don't realize what it is. And socialism and communism has been maligned specifically by people like AOC, because they're so hyper-focused on changing the ideology of people, like calling everybody that disagrees with them, violent, a right-winger, a Nazi, and maligning people. So ironically, it just pushes people away from any sort of liking of the term socialism, which the whole thing is just, workers owning the means of production. It's people's material conditions having more of a say in what their material conditions are. So this is to both of you. Do you guys believe that AOC is controlled opposition, or do you think she's just a weak politician that happened to just win an election and is just a careerist?
David, you go first.
Sure. I definitely think it started as a weak politician and then is definitely morphed into more of a controlled opposition. If you look at her just trying to, in the basic sense of trying to maintain your job and your stability, notoriety within the Democratic Party. That would be my personal take on it. What do you got to say, brother?
I think, when she was on the campaign, it was on and on. Oh, she's just some bartender from the Bronx, I think. Look, she's, a working class queen, and she happens to be Latina. So even that, extra points there. But I mean, what was it? 8 months ago, it came out that apparently she was somehow involved in the ownership of this bar, if I'm recalling correctly, that she was somehow like a partial owner or something like that in this bar that she bartended at. She went to school in Boston, I think at Boston College, if I'm remembering correctly.
University, yeah.
Boston University. And I think she tried to play herself up as just this good old girl from the Bronx who is proving that anybody, if America is just this racist, horrible, uniquely evil government, but despite all that, you can still be a Latin American woman who can come out of, waiting tables and serving drinks all the way up to the federal Congress building. I don't think that's the case. I think that's how it's portrayed. I mean, it's obviously that's how it's portrayed, but I think from the beginning, there was this deep state was recognizing the value in propping someone like her up.
Yeah, it's just like that woke CIA commercial they released a couple months ago.
My family's been in the CIA for a long time, and we buy teddy bears and all this other bullshit. You're the CIA. Give me a break. And that's, I think it's important to always analyze that question. What came first, the chicken and the egg? Was she AOCIA, or did she kind of change there? I think I agree a little bit more with Keaton that she was put there because, we have to pay attention to the mental psyops that our ruling classes are thrusting upon us so we can see it coming before it even happens. And I think that, I even fell for it. I went down to her campaign offices and so impressed the way she did things. But let's digress back to this question about the solidarity, right? Okay, because we've been saying this for a long time. Our time with Keaton in Nicaragua, our time with you, David, when we got to see you do that beautiful presentation in California, we saw a different type of socialism, a different type of communism, or whatever you want to classify it, a different type of solidarity, which is more about economics, right? Presenting resources. Seeing a person like you, Keaton, so different than David on your social issues and stuff, but still the same goal where you can go down to South America and you can even question AOC. Hey, you refuse to stand with Commandant Ortega, which would really piss me off. It pissed me off from a point of view where people like Tulsi were even silent when the Renaissance Act was coming out. Everybody was so concentrated on Kyle Rittenhouse rather than the economic stranglehold the deep state and the United States and the West were preparing to put on Nicaragua and the people of Nicaragua. But how do you sell that version of solidarity of sorts of socialism that's more about economics, especially when a lot of people in the States are so programmed to say, when it comes to socialism and communism, there's too much power. Marxism at its core actually relies on you eliminating people who think differently than you. There's a lack of freedom of choices. Look what's going on with this medical tyranny now. That's what you'll get with socialism. Keaton, how do you sell that? And then David, you can piggyback off your brother when Keaton gives his answer. How do you sell or push back against that narrative right there?
Okay, so I think we ought to start with the last one first, and that was the medical tyranny that we're seeing here in the US, that we're seeing up in Canada. China doesn't have a vaccine mandate, and yet more people are vaccinated in China than in the US. Explain that. Well, for me, it's pretty simple. The Chinese government, under the leadership of the Communist Party, the Chinese government has earned the trust and the respect of their people. The Chinese government has not allowed these medical firms to experiment on people, to bribe government officials to get their stuff passed, and they don't operate on a medical profit incentive. They operate for the people, by the people. So I think that's my answer to that is, if I'm remembering correctly, it was either Huey Newton or Fred Hampton who said socialism is the people. And if you're afraid of socialism, you're only afraid of yourself. And so my kind of initial reaction to when I'm trying to think about, okay, how do we really build a pro-socialist or a socialist sympathetic movement among the broad masses of people? Well, I kind of have to look back on my own childhood, my own early years of political development. And that's coming from a town of about 800 people in the middle of Southern Illinois. And socialism saying, oh, socialism is this. People turn their, they may like everything that comes after the socialism part. They may agree with it, but they're not going to hear it because they've turned their ears off because the American government has won the culture war. The American government has successfully pushed that socialism is AOC and socialism is all this woke stuff. And to be fair, if I thought AOC was a socialist, if I thought Bernie Sanders was a socialist, I wouldn't like socialism either, because those people are trash. But those people aren't socialists, but I can't blame anybody for disliking it. So, I think, Pasta, you and I have discussed this. I have used in the past when talking to people back home the term popular Republican, the idea that we need to have a popular government, a populist government that protects the republic. It's just like it sounds, a populist republic that is focused on lifting people out of poverty, that's focused on building a strong economy and putting American workers first, not multinational corporations, not bankers and oil monopolists.
Yeah, damn straight, man. I think in my personal experience with the organization that I founded, it's so affiliated with the CPI called San Angelo Solidarity, is when we first started, we were focused on disaster relief. We weren't focused on this social issue, that social issue. We were focused on just getting out to people in need because our entire town's water supply got poisoned essentially, and there was no running water in the entire thing. All of it was poisoned with nephelamine, acetone, benzene, all these ridiculous chemical solvents. And basically what we did is we went around and we went to the surrounding towns because it was just like when the pandemic started. There was no water on the shelves, no nothing. So we went and we bought up all the water back and forth for about a week until we got stopped down by the big freeze. And we delivered water to working class, disabled, not able to have the ability to go drive to a distribution site or a water center because for one, there was no water on the shelves. And for two, there was only one distribution site way across town. And we didn't discriminate. We didn't open the door and say, hey, who did you vote for? Are you a good leftist before we can hand you this water? We just talked to regular people and we met their needs directly where they were. We didn't go around virtue signaling or calling for an end to this or an end to that or sitting on our couch doing nothing. We were out there with our feet on the ground, 7 a.m. till midnight, driving everywhere to get water to real people. And we weren't talking about these weird issues. We were just getting to people's real material needs. And I personally, that's what I think is not only the cure to getting people in southern areas, more traditionally what would you call conservative economically areas, to a more socialist position by showing them that this fog of the Cold War that has been fading and fading, it's bullshit and it's just a mist at this point. And what we have the unique opportunity to do in our lifetimes is to capitalize on that mist fading and showing people that socialism isn't this scary Stalin who wants to collectivize your toothbrush and make sure that you and your neighbors share the same car. No, this socialism is your neighbors helping your neighbors and having a government that actually gives a damn about its populace. And to me, just meeting real people is the answer. For one, for the people and for yourselves as organizers, because right now the left is stuck in a state of doom. This doomerism that perpetuates the left's ideology is poison, it's cancer. And the only way to solve that, in my opinion, in my experience too, is to actually get off your ass, go organize, and do something about it.
One of the things that I think has made people just completely back away from anything related to socialism or what they deem socialism is a lot of these people that are very arrogant and elitist when it comes to the discussion of theory. I want to hear from you guys. How important is theory? Because I personally believe reading and educating in theory is important. But however, the people, the way they presented it is extremely the counter opposite of it. It's extremely just intellectual elitism, where, you know, if somebody comes to them and says, for example, the truckers, they didn't like them, they thought they were right-wingers, Nazis, that they weren't real workers, that they were petty bourgeois, and they started focusing on all this theoretical terminology that really paid zero attention to the material conditions that these people were living. How do you bring in theory, and how do you talk to people who are working class, actual working class, without, you know, and teach them about theory, or talk to them about theoretical things without, but also understanding exactly what they're going through? Because most people, you know, if you come up to a random person in the United States right now that are working class and you tell them to go read Marx while they have like all these bills to pay, and they can't, you know, they're having a hard time paying rent, and all this stuff is happening around the world, they're going to tell you to screw off and like to stop talking, because you don't know what the hell they're talking, like what they're experiencing. And I feel like a lot of the left is just very, just finger wags and doesn't really acknowledge the plight that working class people are going through.
Yeah, if I could answer this, I'd love to. Basically, in my experience, I also share the opinion that theory is very important. I mean, our SAS, we started off as a reading group initially, and then we moved into action only after we saw like opportunities that, hey, we need to get up and do something. In that sense too, I would always tell anybody who is interested in joining SAS, if you ever walk up to somebody talking about socialism and they tell you, oh, you're not a perfect socialist, Mao said this in 1963, and so you're not allowed to be hanging out with us in our group. It's like, you need to turn away and run as far as you can, as fast as possible, because those people aren't serious about making the real world better. They aren't serious about making material change. They're serious about virtue signaling and elevating their own social position in Facebook for likes. Like, it's complete lunacy to me. Like, these people, they act like it's a video game. That's all I can say. It's not real life to them. It's just a game. So if you really want to do shit, you're gonna have to see that when the rubber meets the road, it's not always as pretty as you would imagine it to be in your fairy tale world.
Keaton, you want to piggyback on that and stuff like that? Are you a big believer in theory?
Yeah.
You got a book in your left-hand pocket that says, you know what I'm saying? Jesus Christ is a socialist. My mom read that book.
It's a nice mom.
No, I think David's definitely right. My opinion on the matter might not be the most popular among the left, but I find reading Marx and Lenin extremely boring and kind of unengaging. And so if I find it that way, as someone who has been involved in socialist politics for every bit of 5-6 years and who has already forced themselves to read a lot of this stuff, what is, you know, Joe Schmo who works on the oil rig going to think when he gets home after work and just wants to have a beer and watch the evening news? He's not going to read Marx. And that's okay, really, because not everybody who is a socialist has to be a library of information. Not everybody who's a socialist has to be a Caleb Maupin who can spit off historical facts and theoretical facts off the top of his head like it's sports statistics. So you can be a sympathizer with socialism, and that's what we need. I would rather have 10,000 people who support socialist leaders and support the ideas of socialism without understanding the intricacies of Lenin's state and revolution than I would rather have 100 people who understand all these complexities. But, you know, I'd rather have the broad masses than the intelligentsia, than the intellectuals and the academics on my side, because quite frankly, it's those people that were the Congress for Cultural Freedom, and it's those people that get used in psyops. It's the Noam Chomsky types that really end up hurting socialism more than helping it.
Yeah, and if I could just add one more thing to Pasta's question at the end, I think the biggest help for me personally will have to be my partner, Christina Garcia. I got to shout her out, because the way she can talk to people about socialism in such just a plain Joe Smo language to regular people, that's the only way you're going to get to them. That's the only little tidbit I wanted to add. You just be personal, be friendly, be a socialist. You got to be social first, folks.
I like what I'm picking up what you guys are putting down. I really do. I've always liked when I've talked to you guys about this, about concentrating on economics, about the left right now, what's going on in America, the American left. We don't call it, we say there's no left in America, but there is an American left, and they are really some special people and stuff like that. But I'm going to start off this question with you, and Keaton, I want you to start this off and then hand it off to David. If it is so boring and if it is so trite and you don't want to talk about theory, and there are some issues when you talk about theory and you talk about old school socialists, there's a lot of people who say, and this is one you didn't get to, that a lot of old school socialism and Marxism is about eliminating people who think differently than you. You mentioned Xi Jinping over here. I'm not like one of those guys, like, you know, a lot of American conservatives who will point to China for all their problems and think that China's the enemy. But I sure as hell have my suspicions about China, especially when it comes to Xi Jinping and his relationship with Klaus Schwab and the World Economic Forum. So 2 parts, address that situation. And then my second part of the question is, why even call it socialism? Why not brand it as populism? Why not talk about it as something else? Because even Caleb will talk about it will be its own United States. When it adopts a form of socialism, it will be its own. So why not make those changes now?
Well, as far as I'll take on the China part first. I'm not a scholar of China by any stretch of the imagination. I support them as they lift people out of poverty, but that's about the extent that I know on their intricacies. And I know they have involvement with these people. But I think what it gets down to is I am really, for better or for worse, not concerned with what China's doing. I'm happy to take their successes and what their massive gains they've made in raising the living standard, earning the trust of their people. And I can recognize that as good. But when there are downsides to what China is doing, such as their involvement with their support and their trading with Israel, I am also just as equally going to criticize them for that. The difference is I don't ever want to say and make points that will cause people to start, as you said, to start blaming China and take China as cannon fodder instead of recognizing our own domestic issues and our internal issues here in the United States. I think that's probably the best response I can give you, because I do support China. I think China is doing great things, but nobody's perfect. And it's bound to make mistakes. We're all human. That's just the reality of things. But as for why still call it socialism? Well, I mean, for a long time, I didn't even have socialist in my Twitter bio. As I said, I generally, if someone asks my politics, I'm a popular Republican, because I do think there comes a point where we kind of have to recognize that, you know, socialist groups in the U.S. don't have nearly as good of a shot at winning this culture war and winning the information war as the United States government and all its media apparatuses. I cannot put out content. Caleb cannot put out content. Everyone here cannot put out content that is going to get more views and more funding and more engagement than CNN, Fox, MSNBC, and all the corporate media. So I would be okay with if we were to use a term other than socialism, but still maintains those core economic principles. I'd be okay with that. I would support that. But it does set a dangerous precedence, Pasta, because if we're going to just jump ship on our name every time it gets demonized, we're going to have to change names every 2 years, and it's going to start seeming like we're deceiving people. And people hate being deceived, especially when it comes to politics. And we have to be honest about who we are. We have to be honest about what we believe.
David, go ahead.
For sure, yeah. And I think just to go off of what Keaton was saying with the whole deceit thing, I'm not saying China is saints or anything to that stretch of the imagination, but right now, I think it's very obvious to everybody on this panel, the tensions right now going on in the world between the West and Russia and Ukraine, and the potential block between China and Russia, that there is, I wouldn't say just complete out and out disinformation, but there is extreme muddying of the waters on both sides. I'm not going to say China is the perfect saint in this case in any means whatsoever. And as Keaton said, I'm not a scholar on China. I do support their initiatives to try to uplift Africa and uplift the Middle East and trying to expand trade routes and trying to create a multipolar world. And I'm not going to cheerlead for anybody. I'm a Marxist. I'm a ruthless critic of all that exists. So I'm definitely not here to cheerlead. And in that sense, I think we should definitely support them against a war like Cold War 2.0 that has been brewing up, even if we only have these misgivings with China and the way they've been operating recently, which I will happily criticize them on things like Israel too and stuff like that. In the second part of your question, I'm sorry, sir, could you repeat the second part of it?
Well, the second part is why don't we, and let me tell you something, I love the answer that Keaton gave is why don't we rebrand socialism to more of a name that would fit better with the programmed Americans, you know what I'm saying? That as soon as they hear the question, I mean, I think Fee even kind of mentioned the fact that when she came to the country, that question's there. Are you any way affiliated with the Communist Party whatsoever? You know what I'm saying? Like, well, why don't we rebrand that to a populist name? Because, and Keaton explained it beautifully, but I want to know why. Because me personally, I always push for a mixed economy, right? I want to take the best of socialism, the best of communism, the choices of capitalism, the freedom of speech of the libertarianism, and form one thing that fits everything and leave all the crap behind. So why don't you answer the question about, you even said yourself, it's more like populism. Why don't we brand it as populism?
Yeah, that's a really interesting point that you actually bring up, because I've actually had this conversation with the group member before, whenever they were looking into the group, newer to it, and they thought, we're in a very conservative area, small town, medium-sized town, Texas. And they were like, why don't we just do everything we do and just not call it socialism? And I had to think about that for a hard minute. And I really, in the conclusion I came down to with it is, well, there's been so many people who have fought and died for this word, for this movement, for these goals. It just felt really disrespectful for me to say, yeah, I'm going to take everything that y'all have done and use it, but I'm also going to cross out all of y'all's names and not associate myself with y'all. So it's probably not the best answer in the world, but I just feel like personally, it's a title that is being rehabilitated as we speak with the fog of the Cold War lifting. And it is something that can have traction again. And it's something that shouldn't be abandoned on the basis of so many people who have fallen for it.
I adhere to the communist ideology as well. But one of the things that I find off-putting, and one of the things that I think a lot of people find off-putting with it, is this idea that it has to be biblical. Like, it becomes this sort of obsession with spirituality, like this religious fundamentalism of like the way some Marxists and self-declared Marxists. I think a lot of the people in the United States who call themselves communists or socialists aren't really that. They're just confused liberals. But that's just my opinion, just based on what I'm seeing. But they just kind of obsess with it, and they're like, well, if Marx didn't say this, so this can't be, and they don't apply that theory to today's reality, meaning like it's just theoretical. There's no like applications to the now. And that's my biggest problem, is that there's like, for instance, the surveillance state is something that none of these people could have possibly considered, really, because it was so long ago and the conditions, the material conditions were different. There was a lot of reference to feudalism, a lot of reference to that. But now what's happening today with the surveillance state is you have the government, having, which is made up of, at least in this country, of corporations and the 1% and this oligarchy that we live in. But you also have the technocratic world, this technocratic panopticon that we're living in, where you're seeing what's happening in Canada, where now they're going to freeze people's bank accounts and take away people's money and insurance just because of what they believe in. So there's this fascism and this authoritarianism that is a very kind of invisible enemy, because it's based in technology. That's not something that's in any sort of theoretical book. You could apply some of it to it, but it's not really out there. How do you guys plan on dealing with that and growing something like CPI amidst this sort of ever increasing surveillance state?
Well, Fiorella, I was just probably 2 hours ago talking to the head of our youth branch of CPI here in Austin, and he and I were joking, and I said that these, especially the land back Marxists, would make the best damn Christians the United States has ever seen. Only problem is they're atheists, but hey, it raises a very interesting point, because Marx didn't predict security cameras, as far as I know. Lenin didn't, Stalin didn't, but we have to deal with them now. So that's something, obviously, you're bringing the question up, that we've got to start preparing for, because in the case of freezing bank transfers, we have that happening right now on an international level with Afghanistan, where Biden has frozen the now sovereign government of Afghanistan. Whether you like it or not, the new government of Afghanistan is the legitimate government. And now he's going to give that money to 9/11 victims. Sure, we should give money to 9/11 victims, but it was Saudi Arabia's fault that the towers got hit in the first place. So why don't we freeze some of their money and give it to the victims instead of these poor Afghans who are starving to death because of the last 20 years of war and bombing? How do we combat that? Because socialists, CPI, CPUSA, Workers' World, PSL, does not have the technological capabilities to compete on the same level as the United States government does. We don't have giant server rooms. We don't have hundreds and hundreds of probably thousands of internet technology nerds just sitting at their computers all day working these things out. It's putting us in a really tight situation and a tight bind, and that's why we have to rely on populism. That's why we have to rely on the fact that there are more of us than there are of them, and our only hope for victory is mass movements of civil disobedience, of peaceful demonstrations, of confronting politicians and demanding our voices be heard in the government.
Damn straight, man. The only way we're ever going to get this done is if we have the mass of broad working people on our side. We're not going to get to them by saying, culture war this, culture war that. We're going to get to them by showing them that, hey, this isn't the surveillance on you isn't a left-right issue. This is a freedom issue. This is a privacy issue. I mean, nobody wants their privacy invaded in the ways that the government is doing. And good Lord knows what 50 years, 75 years down the line, how complex their systems are going to be. So if we don't nip this in the butt now, it's going to spiral into an out of control measure that I really don't want to be alive to see, to be honest.
Too late. We're already there, guys.
Right?
Too late.
Yeah.
Do you have any last questions? Because I have one last simple question for these gentlemen over here.
No, go ahead.
David, start first. Do you stand with the truckers?
Yes.
Keaton.
My dad is a trucker. My uncles are truckers. My best friend's dad is a trucker. You are absolutely correct, Pasta. I stand with them. I hope to see them come to the U.S. If they do, you better bet that I'm going to be out there helping them, getting footage. We're going to see this thing succeed. Freedom convoy forever.
That's the answer I kind of agree with. I'm there too as well. Let's put the ideology aside and let's stand up for what's right and let's do the right thing. And it's an economic movement. It's a workers' movement. And I'm glad that you guys are there on that.
Yeah, we definitely just need to show these workers that they have power. That's my main concern.
Exactly. If we don't get it, shut it down. They're showing us the blueprint. So that's it, guys. Thank you so much for hanging on in there, David. I know we put you off a couple of times, but I'm glad you can come back on. And it was great to speak to you and Keaton. I love the work you guys are doing. Could you tell people where they can go find your information? Keaton, you start off, and David, you finish on up, and where people can find more information about CPI. And hopefully Caleb was okay the fact that we didn't throw you too much into the frying pan today.
My social medias are my name. It's Keaten Mansfield, exactly as it sounds. Thank you. Twitter, YouTube, whatever.
Cool. For me, it's San Angelo Solidarity on Facebook, Solidarity Said on YouTube and San Angelo Solid 1 on Twitter.
And thank you both, David. Thank you for doing the work you're doing. That's, you know, straight up like local organizing. We need more of that. And Keaton, thank you for pushing and bringing up those questions to members of Congress, because most people don't, and taking all the hate you did from her sycophants. So thank you so much, both of you, for coming on. We really appreciate, and we'd be happy to have you on again.
Yeah, thank y'all. Y'all take it easy.
You too. Bye, guys.
Y'all are Darity there for you, ladies and gentlemen. There he is, David and Keaton, man.
Wow. What a great discussion.
Interview.
Yeah, that was a great discussion. I really enjoyed it. It's crazy that we're discussing this with them, because they, what we were just discussing before with the left is so far removed from that, right? Yeah. Like these are self-described communists. So that's what we're saying when we're talking about, you know, people who like the people that we see online and the people with all these voices calling the truckers alt-right. You know, if these people are alt-right, then I don't know what to tell you. Then I guess we're all alt-right. Like, I mean, it's just crazy. It's just crazy how a lot of the left, besides a few, are just so lost right now, fam. So lost.
Very much lost, and it's just a smear tactic. And really, to tell you the truth, we had two unmasking right after each other. I mean, I didn't consider the election stuff unmasking. I really let ignorance give people mulligans of sorts. Okay, mulligan being in golf that you get another shot, and I allowed that to happen mentally. But then came forced to vote, and we saw a lot of unmasking there, and it was like, wow. Like, you're not even holding these people's feet to the fires. You're not even holding them, making sure that our lawmakers that we put in power, that we donated money to, we're not going to even make sure that they're accountable to what they campaigned on and what they told us they would do. That was part one, and now this was part two over here. And it's not just if you believe the science or not the science of the boops and everything else like that. It's the mandate part, right? It was like, wow, holy shit, this is where you're at. We had more unmasking, and just to see the smear tactics of calling these people out there a labor movement in Canada, a bunch of right-wingers, and to compete, to constantly repeat it, you know, and double down on it. It's mind-blowing. But that's where we're at, fam.
Yeah, and I think our audience might really have enjoyed that discussion too, because, you know, Keaton is from more of a conservative background, you can tell, whereas David is more of a progressive, but at the end of the day, they're both fighting for economic equity for the working class. And I think that's exactly what we need to be doing, regardless of where you stand on every single other issue socially. So that's literally what we need to be doing.
Fam, we witnessed Nicaragua, right? Didn't we? Nicaragua, what we witnessed, we like looked at each other like, holy shit, this conversation that we're hearing right now can never happen in the States, because they would try to cancel Keaton, you know, his feelings and whatnot. But we had somebody from Nicaragua saying, no, even though we think differently, he's standing on the side of solidarity that we need him to stand on. He's being anti-imperialist. He's being pro-economic. He's about sitting there and making sure that we get the resources, not this other culture war bullshit that might be important, but compared to actual resources and distribution of resources. And this is a person from Nicaragua who's seen his people starve, know they need to get these resources and how important it is. It was mind-blowing, life-changing. I loved Nicaragua.
Me too.
Let me read these super rays real quick. We'll get to the last part.
Yeah.
What were you saying? You calling me a commie?
Yeah, obviously. All right. Super
Kristen Nye said, did you see this? And she left a YouTube link. Guys, check it out. Kristen, I'll check it out after the show. Fam, Brian Deutsch is in the house. Deutsch.
What's up, Brian?
Deutsch. What's up, B? Why you both are the best. Disagree with respect. Love you. You're the best, Brian Deutsch. We love you. Thank you so much, Brian Deutsch. Rem, thank you for the Super 8 contribution. It is always appreciated on the couch. And Chuck leaving some more love. Great convo. Awesome guest. I thought it was great, and we have to have a lot more conversations like that. I'm ready to get Caleb back on the show, put him on the microphone even more, and push back against him even more, because he understands those things. You know what I'm saying? I'm going to be on Sam Tripoli in the beginning of March, and we're going to talk about this cultural Marxism, where it came from, and why it's being used by the CIA to divide people. You know what I'm saying? So we're going to talk a lot about these things in the time coming forward.
Sam, start the video. I'll be right back. I have to take a call.
Okay. Let me get to my internet's getting a little weak right now. Guys, thank you so much for joining and stuff. Okay, so we're going to start with the Indian, the chief, right? If you can, am I still going? Because right now my internet, I'm frozen. Am I frozen? Okay. It looks, I'm getting frozen on my side. So let's start over there. There was this great piece out there by this Indian chief who is actually pretty high up in the rankings over there as far as, you know, some of the tribes in Canada. And let's just start. It's saying trying to connect. Am I still here? No internet. It's saying I have no internet. All right, let's just jump right. Let's just jump right into the video feed and let's start off with some of this stuff from the chief.
Between amongst the British, there was a rebellion, and we took sides in that rebellion, and we felt that we were loyal and we were close to our allies, the British Crown, the Queen of England, her ancestors. We were a tight relationship, and so we took sides in that fight, and we lost a bunch of our homelands, and we live here on the Bay of Quinte and on the Grand River now, as a result of that and the ongoing genocide that happened by the Americans upon us. And so our elders always told us not to get involved in their fight. And if it ever come about that they're, you know, these the descendants of the first British soldiers, subjects, that came here, settlers, they even call themselves that today. They say they're settler allies. They say maintain that they're settlers. I get a kick out of that. Anyways, we were told that we shouldn't get involved in their fight because we're going to get dragged into it, and then they'll sort it out amongst themselves, and we'll all wind up having more issues and more trouble.
We had a little history lesson from the chief over there talking about what it was like back in the days as far as situations and, you know, what happened when Canada was colonized and, you know, how they got involved and, you know, the betrayal by the governments that happened in the United States too as well, you know, what they were told, what they would get and what happened actually, you know, was a lot of slaughtering of their people. Fam, do you have anything to say about that or do you want to roll right into the next one?
I mean, it's nice to hear the history and see how it's applying to now, because again, the Canadian government is no friendly. It's just no stranger to pushing sanctions and agreeing with the United States. It's no stranger to what they've done to Native Americans. So to hear, you know, Trudeau preach this and pontificate some sort of different behavior, it's really hypocritical, and I want to hear more of what he has to say.
Yeah, he's laying out because like a lot of people were wondering where a lot of the tribes would stand on this situation. So let's roll right into the next clip.
And so there's a lot of people that are a little bit confused about what's been going on across the country right now, across Canada. That this trucker organization and now there's farmers and a lot of people are protesting, but they're not protesting. they're having a rebellion, and they're attempting to force the politics to change. That's a rebellion. It's not a protest. Protest. Doug Ford had talked about it today. You go out and you say your piece and you make a little bit of noise so people notice you, and you don't do anything that really disrupts, as they call it, a peaceful protest. A lawful peaceful protest means that you actually don't do anything in a way that actually disrupts any function of anyone's life. And then the government will say, well, we heard you. Thank you, go home now. And that's a protest. That's what they called it. That's what Doug Ford said today. I've never protested in my life. It's not something I have any interest to do. Anyways, there's a lot of people that are mixed up about what's happening. And I think it's very important to talk about it, that Canada is currently in a rebellion. And it's amazing because they're staging a peaceful rebellion. There's no billy clubs out and no guns out, and no one's been shot or beaten or stabbed, or none of that's happened. No fires, there's no houses been burned down or stores smashed out. So I find this very intriguing. It's very amazing. I'm sorry I'm talking so long about this, but I'm very concerned about what's about to happen. And I'm upset about it, and there's some people that I hope that this message gets to, and one of them is the Governor General of Canada. You have a fiduciary responsibility as a representative of the Crown of England, who is the head of state of Canada, to report about what's happening.
Did that all right, that clip ended. Fam, what did you think about the part when he talked about peaceful rebellion, right? I mean, this is and that's what he's talking about. This is not a protest. This is a rebellion. This is the citizens coming out and saying, hey, we're going to be here until you leave. This ain't a protest, like just to hear. This is like, we are not leaving until this changes. And I like the fact that the chief is pointed out right here that it's a peaceful rebellion, because so many people say this is a right-wing, nationalist, crazy. There's no billy clubs. There's no pepper spray. There's nobody getting, you see a lot of videos nowadays. You see cops shaking hands with the protester. You know what I'm saying? And this is going to get a little bit better, because the thing that was so intriguing, and I only have 2 more clips, was that the chief was able to explain what's going on today and how what the actual kind of energy or synergy of the protest of what's going on, the rebellion that's going on. And yet still, in this particular clip coming up next, he's going to still make sure that the history is understood about how Canada became a nation. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I thought it was important that he mentioned rebellion, that it was a rebellion, not a protest. And I think that's an important distinction that he made, because we've been calling this a protest, but really the fact that it's a rebellion is a huge issue, because they're rebelling against the status quo. They're rebelling against something that's happening. They're not just holding up signs. They're actually trying to seize the means of production, which again, I go back to it, this is what the left has wanted to do forever. And you know, sure, there are some people that are wealthy that are involved, that donated. There's some people that are right-wing that donated, but it like any sort of working class movement is going to have those outliers anyway. It's going to have people that try to start things up. So that is partly what I don't understand, why they're so intent on maligning this whole thing as one entity, as one giant monolithic entity, when it's just completely the opposite of that.
Team sports, fam. It's team sports. Roll the next clip.
And he's just threatened he threatened women and children and kids in Ottawa are having a festival asking for him to resign. He just threatened them that they're going to use the federal police and the provincial police, and if that won't resolve it, then it's still on the table to move the military onto those people on land in the city of Ottawa that they don't have a treaty on. It's unceded territory and lands. And I've personally spoke to the clan mothers and the people of that land who has the hereditary indigenous land title, the right to those lands. And I know that because we have a treaty relationship with them. And they don't want those people. They don't want the people in Ottawa, the Parliament buildings, and Justin Trudeau and the Senate and everything. They don't want those people on their land. They never said it's okay. So the Governor General, you have a responsibility to step in here. And if you shirk your responsibilities, or maybe they told you that your job is just it's just a window dressing, it isn't. You have a responsibility. And if you fail to do your responsibility, what you're doing is you're allowing this to fall on the indigenous people to take responsibility and to step up and to do something about this. And I'm upset about what's happening because it's not our business, but it's spilling over onto us. You made mandates and put it on our people, on our lands. And our lands are not part of Canada. And our people aren't a part of Canada. We're not even Canadians. And when you made your Indian Act, you even said Indian is anyone that's not a person. You didn't even claim us. And so we have an established relationship like that. And you spent 100 years to eradicate our language and our culture. There's no way we're ever going to desire to be a part of you.
Fam, it gets deeper too. Like, there's a 53-minute video on this whole thing. I just broke it up into a couple parts from the Twitter that I took it off of. But it really talks about how the colonizers go in there and they rape these Indians for their resources. And that's what they're doing to this day. And now they're going against the treaties that were signed with these indigenous people and whatnot. And you know, the war chief over here feels that he's been put in a very weird situation that's kind of indicative of what happened years ago. Beef within you know their own communities now thrusted upon the Native Americans. And I don't know if you have anything to say like that. I got one more last clip because he also presents a solution to what's going on.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's important to point out the fact that the hypocrisy of people like Trudeau and the Canadian government, that they didn't even recognize the Native people, yet at the same time, now they're demanding that they follow these mandates, which I think is just, you know, is something that is extremely from that colonizing mindset where we're going to use you and tokenize you when it's convenient. And I think that's what neoliberals have been doing with Latinos here in the United States and with Black people in the United States. And so it's the same thing, right? And a lot of people who are Latino and Black are sick and tired of being tokenized for votes without these people doing anything. And that's also a part of what Trudeau is doing as well.
Play the last clip, and you can get a solution right here from the war chief.
And you said that this is not what Canada is made on. You're right, because Canada was made on theft and murder of my people, of the indigenous people of these lands. That's what it's built on. And you had the audacity to encourage well, maybe you didn't, but I suspect you did. The audacity to encourage the smear campaigns of swastika flags and white supremacy. But Canada is built on white supremacy, literally built on white racism. The Canadian flag, that red and white maple flag, has as nasty of blood and history on it as a swastika. And so I'm upset because what you're doing is you're causing us to have to interfere and to get involved in this now. And Mr. Trudeau, I got some words for you too. You said you're going to try every possible peaceful means there is to solve this. Well, there being any violence. Well, it's pretty simple. They said drop the mandates and you need to quit. You can do that tomorrow. That's peaceful as it gets. You said everything's on the table, everything can be done. They said they want you to resign. They don't have any confidence in you. You can't even go anywhere in public without them throwing rocks at you and booing you. The people don't love you.
He said you can do it tomorrow. You can end the mandates tomorrow. You can stop this from happening. Your thoughts on that? Because I thought it was amazing. And I thought that part of I really had to play that clip more than anything because he did. He was like, all right, like, you know, trust Justin Trudeau has the nerve to start like, calling people Nazis and looking at this swastika that looks like, all these people are like paid to be there with the same type of pants and everything. And it's awfully fishy to me, but you have the right, you have the nerve to invoke that shit. Meanwhile, your flag right here was built upon fucking literal white racism, pushing out indigenous people for English colonizers or French colonizers to come over, fam.
Yeah, I mean, it's the same thing in the United States when these same two illusion parties come in, and specifically the Democrats talk about white supremacy and cluster of pearls when the United States government was founded on that, and they haven't done shit for immigrants, and they haven't done shit for Black people. It's the same type of mentality, and that hypocrisy has to be called out by especially the indigenous people of the Americas that were, entirely wiped out in North America, essentially, and that are, barely even a thought when it comes to a lot of things. I mean, I saw that Misty and Facts on the Ground have been covering some of the missing indigenous women, which I think is amazing because a lot of people aren't covering that. And, it's even to that point where they don't even make a blip on the radar of most people. And so to have these neoliberals come in and tout this sort of, white savior mentality, it's just really unnerving when you're a minority that's often tokenized. So, yeah, I agree with him 100%. He could end it right there, but he won't.
No, he won't.
Because it's not about that.
It's not that. We know that stuff. And I know there'll be a lot of people clutching their pearls like you talked about and saying, we can't do this. It's a public health safety measure over here. Come to my Twitch, like me, give me a coin. Canadian refugee, thank you for the Super Ray contribution. It is always appreciated on the couch. Fam, you wrote a article, and it was a fire article.
Fam, it wasn't that long. You're ridiculous. It was not long. It was one of my shorter pieces.
It wasn't the 3-part series Daniel Steele book. It was the 1-part series.
Have you seen some of the Gray Zone articles? They're even longer than that.
I know. All right. So go ahead.
No offense, Max. Just saying.
Go ahead.
Yeah.
Break it down. Let us know what you got over here.
I'm just going to run through this because a lot of the people that are working for T-Mobile right now, actually, I'm really humbled by their thank yous. They're very happy that I wrote this article. They're very happy with it. And that's my whole like purpose in writing the article. Like, I'm not getting paid for this in any way, shape, or form. Like, this is because people came to me and they're like, nobody's talking about this, and I need to talk about this story. Can you please use your platform to talk about it? I mean, that's what journalism is supposed to be about. I didn't go through and go through everybody's social media and say, well, is this person a Republican? Is this person a leftist? Is this person because that's what I'm expecting. Like, I'm getting in trouble by the left for covering things like this, just like we got in trouble for going and covering elections and going to the Capitol on January 6th. It's so stupid. Journalism is supposed to be about what is something that is worth telling what the people should know about corporate abuses or abuses from your government. And in this case, it's both, because the corporations are using the government as a sort of fodder, an excuse to impose these draconian mandates. So basically, T-Mobile employees decided to speak out against this vaccine mandate that's going to fire thousands, I think at this point, of workers by April 2nd. And the company has chosen to mandate what they call a magenta pass. And so you get this pass once you're fully vaccinated. But what's happening is that there has been coercion, overreach, abuse, and an attempt to dismiss the HIPAA rights of these working class employees. And so we know that the Supreme Court ruled, right, that Biden's attempt to allow the federal government to force vaccine mandates on businesses, on private businesses, they ruled it out and said that was not allowed. The problem is that it still allows private businesses to do it on their own. So that's what Jen Psaki they were trying to pivot, like, oh, we're not going to enforce it, but then the private entities were enforcing it for politics and because they thought that that they had to in so many instances because of the political climate. And so a lot of these people reached out to me, told me their concerns, and there are documents. You can see this email where they let people know what they had to do in this document. I'm not going to read the document. You guys can read it for yourself, but it basically says what I just said. And then the next one, it's frequently asked questions that they got from an employee manual. This is straight from T-Mobile. What happens if they don't get their first dose? Well, if they don't get the first dose by February 21st, they have to go on unpaid leave and use their paid time off and then go on unpaid leave. And then what happens if they don't get it by April 2nd, where they're completely they're completely going to be fired essentially at that point. And so I wanted to talk about why they're allowed to do this, because we have a really shitty situation in the United States when it comes to employees, right? We have very little union power, and the unions that do exist are corrupt. They function like corporations. They function along with the current state. They sell out their own, a lot of the unions that are popular, like the Teamsters and the SCIU, are owned by the Democratic Party. They're pretty much just like extensions of the Democratic Party establishment. And they're all for mandates because that's the political area that they've chosen to operate in. But at will means that the employees can terminate an employee, an employer can terminate an employee at any time for any reason except an illegal one. And they have zero liability that they're going to go through. And so they can also change the terms of employment. And that can mean like altering their wages, putting people on call, reducing benefits. Most countries don't operate like that, but we do in every state except, I believe, Montana. And so this is why the company's political leading plays such a role, because if the company decides that they want to participate in this woke culture, they're going to back that regardless of how their employees feel, which is pretty much what's happening here. One of the first people that came to me, Pasta, was this Mexican-American woman who has worked in retail and restaurants her whole life since she was 17. She has a lot of siblings that depend on her, a mother, she's got a child, and family issues. She's been afraid of retaliation. And this person, of course, I asked her some questions about why she doesn't want to get vaccinated. And she basically, and she spewed out a lot of the things we've been talking about. She said there's been a lot of censorship around surrounding the negative side effects, that she doesn't trust corporations that are bought and paid for and sponsored by corporations like Big Pharma that have a political agenda. The mRNA is still new and evolving. And she also talked about how, of why, that it's wrong to be forced. Well, because the FDA and the CDC that approved Comirnaty won't be releasing that information until about 2025. And so she just needed more information, and she felt like it wasn't fair to force this. Now, I asked her if she felt persecuted, and she said she did, and especially among her team, because she works in the corporate sector of the company, and she felt like her team was looking at her as an outlier, having this whole Trump supporter agenda for not believing in the vaccines. And, what she's saying, Pasta, goes to show just the political climate we're in, that if you're anti-mandate, if you're saying, wait a minute, I have some hesitancy, you're somehow a right-winger. And that's not just happening to us in media, it's happening to people in the real world, in the world of working. And I think, this, what we saw plays right into that, right? And so I asked her who she supported in the presidential primaries and the elections, and she said she supported Bernie Sanders, and she was working the Iowa caucus in the last election and saw corruption of the DNC. And again, I was there, and I this person was there too, and it's crazy. I don't know who I don't know them, but it's crazy to me that the variety of people that I talk to that are completely from all different paths, and then they voted for Howie Hawkins in the general election. And it's, I don't know if you want to say anything on that. It's just like, this is an ex-Bernie supporter here saying, I don't want these mandates. And I think it's wrong, and I need more information. A lot of the things we've been saying.
I don't really have much to say on that. You hit it all in the nose there, fam. I got my microphone on. But yeah, I mean, the thing this whole situation, right? Like in the beginning of this segment and stuff like that, the thing that really just jumped off the page for me was like, the fact is that, they said from the get-go, they're not going to do this themselves. The federal government's not going to push it. But yes, on the forefront and even backdoor rooms, they push these mandates upon these big companies, right? These companies that were thought to be like not big corporations that have less than 150 employees, whatever the case may be, but they were behind closed doors pushing this situation. And it seems like it's because it is politically expedient. Why in the world would T-Mobile continue to go through this whole situation when it comes to mandates when everybody's dropping their mandates around them? That is the question. But why? Once again,
right. I was going to say, yeah, well, it's political, but it's also a PR move. And we're going to get to that in a minute.
Please do.
Because the second person that I interviewed was a man, and he was of a higher up kind of standard employee. And this person was more of a libertarian point of view. And, he noticed that a lot of the employees that were positive with COVID were vaccinated, including a double vaccinated and triple boosted employee. But the company is still urging these the business-to-business workers to go back into the office for 4 days a week in spite of these employees being sick. So obviously, this isn't about safety. This is about an image that they're portraying. He also said that he knew of an employee with immunity disease that didn't want to get the vaccine because, again, you don't know how it's going to react with autoimmune compromised people or whatever X disease. And the third-party doctor that T-Mobile uses, which is completely strange to me that they're using their own third-party doctor, said no, so the person had to get the vaccine. So this is coercion. This is forcing people to choose between their livelihood, because a lot of these people have been working for years or if not decades with this company. They have, 401ks, they have health insurances, they have dependents that they're working for. They are so scared of losing their job, especially in this economy where we're at 7% inflation. And so you're seeing that T-Mobile is taking advantage of that. And, they revealed that one of the employees that spoke out against what T-Mobile was doing was fired just for speaking out against it. And so I asked him, is this a political issue or a personal issue? And then this person said he believes that this is he's apolitical, that he believes in markets and free thinking. So that's the whole libertarian mindset. And it would be catastrophic for them to lose their job. And I asked them what was their political ideology. They said that they were a registered Republican a long time ago, and they align libertarian, free market capitalism, and that they've been stressed out because of this. And so it just, again, this is a completely different political standpoint, a different person, a different tax bracket, but they're still against these mandates, right? Yeah. And the next person I want to point out, because this one really, really hit me, and I was talking to them, and it really, I just felt so helpless, so useless, because this is a cancer patient that's enduring chemo and is in fear of losing their job, like extreme fear. And this person is enduring a rare form of stage 4 cancer that requires them to travel for 4 hours. Now, I know how that is. My mother, when she had breast cancer, she left Florida because Florida has like some of the worst healthcare when it comes to these type of treatments. And, and so it's just this kind of thing where and also insurance here wasn't as good. And this person had to travel 4 hours, and they described that the cancer treatments were very expensive. And if they lost their health insurance, it would destroy them, because it would be a life and death situation here, because the shot, and you can show it as they have to pay $3,000 out of pocket, but the total, that's with insurance, but without insurance, it's $29,846 for one of these shots that they have to get for their treatment. And that just goes to show you, for all the Medicare for all people that are pro-mandate, that think that all these people that are anti-mandate are a bunch of Trump supporters and that they don't deserve empathy. This is one person that is suffering, not just because of lacking health care, but because of these mandates, because now they can't really, they're stuck between a rock and a hard place because they don't want to get this vaccine because they don't know. Their doctor is saying, we don't know how this is going to react with your cancer. This person has an aggressive cancer and they're doing trials, but the trials are strict. They can't have too many elements within them. And so they're afraid of the possible side effects that the vaccine could cause on this cancer that could grow back and kill them. And you know, this isn't to say anything about the vaccines, but this is about the cancer, the two elements coming together and all of this happening. And so, you know, they think this is wrong. They said, this is my body, my choice. I believe in vaccines, but I believe it is a person's choice on getting them. And, you know, and they think that this is a political thing for the company to do, and that the company has always preached about diversity, and they go to semi-annual trainings on this, but they're going against everything they do. And obviously, if they lost their job, they would lose their insurance, which would mean, you know, it would be impossible to continue treatments, and they could potentially lose their life. And this has caused so much anxiety and depression, and they're worried about, you know, the whole thing. And they only make about $47,000 a year. So if you compare what they make per annual salary to what they would have to pay for one treatment for this cancer, I mean, it's ridiculous. You know, this is completely entirely unaffordable.
Yeah. I just hear Shaq's voice running through my head as you're reading this, right? You know, the whole situation. It's forced. Well, not really. It's not. That's forced. Well, if you look at it, no, that's forced. Like, if you're not going to do this, you're going to lose your job at T-Mobile, and you're not going to be able to pay, you know, your bills. And like you said, you talk to these people, how much anxiety, you know, builds inside you when you start talking to people who you understand their life is on the line. They lose this job. They lose everything. They can't feed themselves. They can't house themselves. What will they do? You know what I'm saying? And it's just so, I don't want to use the word disgusting, but it's very sad to see the way a lot of people would say, well, they have a choice. Like, no, they don't have a choice. They're being coerced. End of story.
Right. And yeah, imagine this person takes the vaccine and then something happens and then it worsens their disease. I mean, and you know, who's held accountable for that? Nobody.
We can't sue them. They got qualified immunity, right?
They got qualified immunity. T-Mobile's got qualified immunity, right? And something I pointed out in Niko's stream, this is the next part, is that as I was finishing up this report, they told me that they received this email, because you have to, in order to apply for a medical exemption, you have to go through this whole process. And they received this email that cites that they must sign an authorized to release healthcare information form that will allow T-Mobile's own medical doctors from Broadspire to contact their doctor. So in other words, the employee has to waive their HIPAA rights to a third-party company. If they do not, the company will only assess the application based on the information they have been given by the employee, effectively denying them the exemption for lack of documentation. And you can see this in the email below. I'll just show it to you guys. It's hard to read, so I'm just gonna show it up there. But they have to sign this authorization to release healthcare information. And if they do not submit the signed authorization form, or any clarification or additional information needed will be requested through them, and so that won't be deemed enough. And so they needed to do that by today. So today's the last day. You know, I have to go touch base with them because today's the last day they could have presented this authorized form. And it looks like the next part in yellow, the next part in yellow. This is what it looks like. It's a little bit bigger than that, but I wanted to highlight this part because this is what it says. It says, once my health information is disclosed pursuant to this authorization, it will become part of my T-Mobile employment record, maintained separately from my other personal records, and will no longer be subject to protections under federal and state health information privacy laws. So once they have this, they no longer have the HIPAA protections. And so they're not required to provide the above authorization and may refuse to sign the form. However, doing so may result in the denial or delayed processing of my accommodation request. The above named healthcare provider may not refuse treatment based on my refusal to provide the above authorization. And they say, you know, this is the Genetic Information Non-Discrimination Act of 2008 prohibits employees from requesting or requiring genetic information of individuals or family members of the individual, except specifically in this case. So, I mean, they protect their asses at every turn. And again, what Shaq said, right? This is coercion because they're saying you don't have to sign this. But if you don't sign it, then you risk a chance, a very big chance of not getting this. And so a lot of people don't want to put their information in a third-party app, which they have to upload their information through a third-party app, their vaccination card. They have to upload it to a third-party app. Or they don't want to seek medical exemption via a third-party doctor. Why can't they deal with their doctor and the company? No, they want to put like a middleman in there that's part of the company's own doctor, which is, I mean, it's completely ludicrous. And of course, while this happens, their HIPAA rights have to be waived. So this is a fucking joke right now. This is literal coercion, right?
This is. The third doctor is just amazed. It amazes me, right? You know what I'm saying? Like now they're choosing the doctor that you have to go to that's going to make a decision whether you have a job or not. It's like,
yeah. I mean, what the
our
hell?
doctor, he's not biased, fam. Henry, get in here. Remember we gave you that little splash? Speak to Dr. Henry, and we'll figure out what's what.
And so just to be really like wrapping this up here, is this really about health? No, because multiple employees shared that they believe that the firing of the unvaccinated is more about having a better excuse to fire people because the company already planned on downsizing anyway. So there was a merger between Sprint and T-Mobile, and they had said that they weren't going to fire people for 3 years, but they began firing people. They've begun firing people in the last few weeks. I've been getting this information. And so a lot of people feel that things are getting worse and that they have to be careful with anything they say or risk getting fired easily. They feel like they're walking on eggshells. If you go to this online forum called thelayoff.com, you can see complaints about T-Mobile, like so many of them. One of them said, someone mentioned that working here feels like walking on eggshells. I pretty much agree with that description. If I had known that I would have to be so extremely cautious about everything here, I would have never come to this company. In other companies too, I had to be careful not to say something that was unpopular, but nowhere is it like here. It seems that people here are afraid of what they will say, how they will be, how they will do something, etc. And so people are saying they will retaliate against you if you say something you don't like. What does that sound like? That sounds like fucking Justin Trudeau's Canadian government. If you say something that upsets someone, they're gonna go after you. I mean, it's that culture, that mentality, that wokeism, and I hate that word has been maligned by these idiots and these neoliberals, but that's exactly what this is. I mean, you can't live in peace, right? And another reason why this is not about health, because I got this data from a whistleblower who didn't even share their name with me, but sent me this data that's they have access to from the company's own numbers of who's sick, from what department, and who isn't. And 77% of the workforce is vaccinated, okay, at T-Mobile. So that's a pretty high number. T-Mobile has 72,159 employees, which means that around 17,000 employees are unvaccinated. And these are the ones the company is willing to part ways from. And so, as mentioned previously, the retail positions do not need to be vaccinated, even if they're the ones interacting the most with people and account for 94% of the employee COVID cases. So I didn't mention it on this show, but the retail employees, the ones you see every day, at the stores, they don't have to be vaccinated. And most of the COVID cases are coming from the people that are retail employees in general, because it's a mix of vaccinated and not vaccinated. The vast majority of employees are vaccinated in general. Yeah. So it doesn't even matter. And so, in fact, the data says that last year, 62,430 out of 66,412 cases of COVID exposure were retail related. Why? Well, probably because they interact with the most people, whether they're vaccinated or not. It's just a numbers game here, right? So you take into account these numbers, the mandate is due to 5% or 3,982 non-retail employees who got COVID. So they're focusing on the 5%, 3,982 non-retail employees who got COVID out of the 66,412 COVID exposures. And only about 73% or 48,754 reported no symptoms. So even though the vast majority of people are vaccinated, and on top of that, most people who got COVID reported no symptoms. So this is not about health. They're focusing on a 5% of people who are unvaccinated. And so that leads people to say, this isn't about the unvaccinated. This is about using that as an excuse, because it works for better PR than saying, oh, we're just going to downsize and fire a bunch of these people.
Absolutely. That's what it is. They're using the cloak of COVID to go away and fire these people that they haven't promised. They promised they wouldn't fire for 3 years. And we understand why the people in the stores aren't being touched, because those are low income employees, and it's hard to fill those positions, right?
Yep.
So you can't even mess with them because you can't even get that workforce there. But the people in the offices who make a few bucks, who have been with us for a while, who've been loyal, well, we need to downsize and get rid of them. So let's use the cloak of COVID to do so. And that's exactly what's going on here, fam. Great work, by the way. It's awesome. And as far as that wokeism is concerned, right? I'm going to do my Joe Biden impression over here. Woke used to be about being awake. There was like a form of consciousness with woke. But now you wokeism people have been so annoying that we wish you go back to sleep. Thank you.
And fam, that was a terrible Biden impression. I think you could do better. But
Shut up, Oz.
I mean,
I did the whole better thing when
said that you did
talks
terrible.
like this.
Sam, you've done way better Joe Biden impressions.
You've been making fun of all my impressions lately.
I haven't. Steve and Yeti were making fun of your Canadian
You
impressions.
agreed with them.
Of course I agreed with them. But by the way, the corporate headquarters of T-Mobile is based in Bellevue, Washington. And one of the people that I talked to who is vaccinated but is anti-mandate and was speaking to me about how awful this is, was saying that they make them. And this is something that, this is controversial to many people on the left, but like that they are forced to attend what she called these white privilege classes, which they weren't called that. They were called something more corporate, but they basically were like forced to attend this thing after the George Floyd protest, where she felt it was like very woke and like just kind of like forcing an ideology on them. And even though if you agree with the protest or not, I think it's a little weird to force people to attend something like that. And she was just citing that as like, this is like how they are. Like, if you don't agree with their thought process, they're going to malign you in some way. And it's like, well, I'm a leftist, I agree. I thought what happened with George Floyd is wrong and all that, but do you have to bring up this whole thing into the workplace and force people to like take a side on? I think that's overextending what the workplace is supposed to be about. And I think it's that sort of mindset that we're seeing here with the Canada, right? And the trucker and the reaction towards the truck is what we're seeing with Justin Trudeau. A lot of what we're seeing on the left, the culture war left that we were just talking about with the people we know with Keaton and David, it's like they're so focused on that. And it's really pushing people away. And a lot of people are seeing just how it's just a ruse to get people to agree with them on some sort of political stance, to make themselves look better. It's not about health. It's not about anything to do with working people. So, yeah, that's I wanted to.
What song is in my head all the time that I used to be like, I thought it was like a popular song and it was really cool, but I think it's just so awful now, is that song, Which Side Are You On? Which side are you on? Like, I can't get it out of my head because I think they used it for justification to go through with their woke fucking ways and stand behind this fascist, authoritarian fucking new world of fucking agenda that's coming here and it just plaguing all of us. And it's really keeping us split, fam. Great work, by the way. And to all you, those people in the chat that said my Joe Biden was awful, that was horrible. And Andre, I'll remember that. Fam, can we read some super rays? You got anything else to talk about?
No, just check out the article, spread it around. There's more coming. A lot of people still want to speak out. They're going to retaliate against them. They've been retaliating against them. And I mean, if we don't cover these stories, is the mainstream media going to cover them? The mainstream media got some of these people fired because they don't know how to do things properly. So it's just, it's really scary. I mean, I take it very seriously when it comes to protecting sources, right? And I think it's important that these people don't lose their jobs for speaking out and saying what they're saying. And more journalists need to cover stories like this. You know, and this is absolutely a workers issue. This is working people, everyday Americans from all ideologies, all races, all ethnicities, standing against mandates and standing up for what they believe is their right to their own bodies. And I think more people need to understand, especially on the left, that just because you disagree with someone ideologically doesn't mean that they're not a worker, that they're not a person that is in need, and that's unworthy of being heard.
I think a lot of people are going to be like, that's it, we're boycotting T-Mobile, but where the fuck are you going to go? Monopolies, right? They're merging with Sprint. You can only go to friggin' Verizon or AT&T, and they got the same BS over there too as well.
Well, they're not mandating. They're not mandating, so that's the thing. Yeah, I know. They still suck.
But ways that they screw people. We know these corporations are terrible, and AT&T is terrible as well. Thank you so much for the Super Ray contribution, Hunter Carranza. Much love. We love you too. Shadow Ban Refugee fam sticking up for you over here. Says long form articles are the best kind. It allows for the in-depth expansion of the thesis. My first article was like 18 pages long. Franco's was like 1 billion pages long. Working on a series that are like 15 pages long each. Thank you, Paulie. Thank you for the Shadow Man Refugee. We love you. We love the information.
Thank you, Paulie. See?
You talked about my beard this morning, fam. Great men wear beards. Cryro Synth 42 in July of 2020, before Pfizer was granted emergency use of vaccine in December 2020, there was a huge push of workers to come back to work. You can look it up in July 2020, back to work. Companies who were renting, maintaining, upkeeping, etc., their properties were losing money. People lost jobs back then. People have been traumatized for over 2 years now, not just about the vaccines. Thank you so much for that info, brother. We'll look more into that, Cryo. Laura Genovese, che fai? Kushin, truckers, cheers to the truckers. Bravo to the Convo Couch for covering this historic rebellion and continually exposing our real enemies. And a loud applause to Fiorella for our outstanding moving article on T-Mobile's brutal exploitations. Love you guys, even though it was only 17,000 pages long. I added that part in the end just to mess with Chuck. Chuck, we love you. Great job, Fee. I am waiting till the end to ask a question to Pasta. I don't want to kill the momentum of the show. Please let me know when a good time is to ask an off-topic question. If it's okay, if that's no problem, thank Chuck. You better do it right now because we are about to get out of here. You know, we'll send some love out. We'll give you a couple minutes to get the question up, and then we got to get on out of here. But thank you, everybody who joined us today on the Rokfin. We had over 140 people for most of the show. That was great. We had over 300 people at one time on the YouTubes. I guess they're all jumping off and running somewhere right now. But thank you to all. Another Super Ray. Here we go. Thank you to all our Patreons out there. Thank you guys to everybody who helps hits those GoFundMes up. We don't know if we'll be using GoFundMe in the future. I think Fam has an opinion about that now. Like, yeah, I think we might be done with these assholes after they pulled that shit with the truckers and whatnot. But thank you guys so much. Okay. Hey guys, I finally saw a YouTube notification. I don't want to interrupt the show, but I have saved this till the end. I know I've asked this before and I haven't heard an answer to the question yet. When I ask what would have to happen for you to say Q is real, full stop. A typical question example should be, Trump would have to overturn the election. Everyone from Russiagate must go to jail, and love you. Fam, do you want to answer that really quick, or you want me to tackle it really quick?
I've answered that before. There's nothing you could do to convince me Q is real because it's a psyop. There are elements that were thrown in there that are real, just like in a lot of psyops, there are elements that are real. That doesn't mean the whole theory that was espoused is real. And I'm not, I'm not mocking anybody that fell for it at this point, because where does that get us? But I am saying, like, you have to understand the nature of psyops. What they do, the intelligence community does, is to try to discount the realities of things like the COVID narrative, like January 6th and all of these things. They throw in a bunch of false information in there with it. Think of Alex Jones as an example. He says some of the things that are true, but then it goes into a certain way that it's not. It's complete and total bullshit. And so what happens is the truth is discounted along with that.
Yeah.
And so that's where they have people at. And that's my answer. It's like, no, because it's just not. Like, we've looked at it. Jason Burmis has done a great job of debunking it. And you guys can watch his video. But that doesn't mean that nothing, like everything that was said in that is entirely untrue. Pasta, I don't know if you have anything to say.
Well, no, I mean, pretty much you hit it on the nose right now. Well, what is his purpose? What I believe its purpose was, I know there's, I asked a question to Dr. Ryan Cole when we were out there in DC, and I would say, what about this situation about blah, 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 and blah, blah, blah. And he said, I don't have that information. I would hope there would be like a white hat, white helmet. I think it's called a white hat, like a good guy out there doing something for the greater good, whatnot. And I think that's what QAnon was all about. It was hope porn that there was going to be some accountability for the elites out there, whatnot. But it also framed Donald Trump as this Jesus savior who was recruited by Jesus to come and save us all. And that was a problem. What really scares me today is the same thing that scared me with Q, Chuck. And thank you so much for the generous contribution. I really do appreciate it. And I'm not trying to mock you in any way, shape, because there was a lot of things in Q that I hope that come true, because I want to see some accountability from those in our society who have preyed a predator class on the most vulnerable, especially when it comes to children and using children as currency. However, it seemed like to me what we're seeing now today is a way to pivot into the Democrats and the liberals in this country are bad, vote for the conservatives and the Republicans and they'll save you. The reason why a lot of us are here today and why we kind of classified ourselves as old school leftists of sorts and why we're in that camp was Iraq, right? Iraq was one of those situations where we saw a lot of people within our community, our family members and whatnot, justify us going in to bomb Iraq because the media made Saddam Hussein look like a modern day fucking Hitler. But we understood that back then, that this was about the military industrial complex. This was about other corporations going in there, stealing their resources, about selling cokes, the Pentagon selling cokes at $9 a piece, whatnot. This was much more than that, what was going on. And what they had done then was like, okay, you in your core are a leftist, you're a Democrat, because you could see that these people are racist, these people, they don't give a shit about Muslims. And, we saw a lot of people kind of justify this, I think, because they were Muslims over there. But then they were to pivot you into that Democratic Party. Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, fam, you're not going to fool me again. Shame on me. And I'm not going to let that happen to me again. They tried with Q in my mind because there was a lot of bullshit there that made my light bulbs go up and my antennas go, okay, hold on, this is bullshit. And the thing about it is all those things that were supposed to happen, they didn't happen. And people are trying to extend the narrative. Well, no, they're letting Biden in there now and go on. And eventually they're going to come and there's going to be the day when they come back and they're going to unseat Biden. Trump's going to get back into office. Everything's going to be okay. They're all going to be held accountable. No, Patrick Byrne, I didn't release this video yet. I've been waiting to release it. Patrick Byrne, I questioned him. I said, hey man, you once said that Q was full of shit. What are your thoughts on that now? And he kind of was taken back by it because, once again, he got a lot of pushback from the hope porn people that really wish that this Q thing was the truth. So I don't think you can convince me that Q is the truth. And it's very hard to really decipher out there what is real, what is fake, and what not. But I'm just not sold on it, my man. And Chucky left another Super Ray. And really quickly, I'm going to read it. Thank you again, Chuck, again, for your generosity. Q is supposed to represent an insider who is conducting multiple psyops to wake people up. Yes, I know about that. I heard about that. An ex-military guy. And there seems like a lot of logic when you talk about the Q narrative of that. There are a lot of people within the military who are disgusted and fed up with these elites like the Clintons who have misused our military, misused our forces to further their imperialism, their globalist agenda. And it does make sense. And you would hope that there are sensible young men, sensible young women, sensible people within the military that would go, we need to stop this shit. But then you saw people like Mark Milley, and they just joined the fucking globalist mentality and crew and keeping us divided with things that are going on. Things did not pan out the way Q said they would pan out. And and you keep extending it and extending it and extending it. And you have to realize for what it is sometimes. And I believe completely with Fiorella that it is a psyop, because what they do is what we saw is they would lump everything in together. Now you couldn't even like go after Epstein stuff or talk about the Clintons, because now you also were classified as a person who believed highly in adrenochrome being mined from Uyghurs in China, brought back to give to our celebrities. And I don't know if I fucking believe it. You see what I'm saying? You see what I'm saying? So I don't know if I can buy
Uyghurs.
that, Chuck.
That's a lot. That's a lot to take in. Adrenochrome mined from Uyghurs. But I think people are believing this stuff because there's so much distrust in the current system. So I don't blame people for, falling for a lot of this stuff. But what you got to understand is anytime they make you pick team sports, they put out, Donald Trump is a hero or the Democrats is the hero. Anytime it's any of those things, that's not the truth. The truth is the fact that none of these people are heroes, that you have far more in common with the working people of this country than you have with any of these billionaires, any of these politicians. Are not going to save us. None of these people are going to save you. The only people that are going to save you are yourselves, each other. And that's what you always have to keep in mind when you look at these things.
The rest of the sentence, he says, after the people are woken, I believe Q will act to free us from our oligarchs. Not only us, but the world. Here are some of the science below to wake the masses: Russiagate, election fraud, COVID, Epstein, Kyle Rittenhouse, vaccine passports, yellow vest, Taiwan takeover, Ukraine, Hunter Biden laptops, Pizzagate. I mean, here's the thing, Chuck, and I love you. And he put down, thank you guys. Also,
you're welcome, Chuck.
Yeah, Chuck, thank you so much. Game.film said, I watch you guys every day. Keep up the good work. But Chuck, let me just say this much. We don't need Q to save us. That's the whole point. That's the real reason why I don't believe in Q. Nobody's coming through that door to fucking save us. Superman is not flying through that window to fucking rescue us. We got to do it ourselves. So that's why I don't believe in the whole main thesis of Q, that there's somebody out there to save us. I believe that's what the oligarchs want, is they always want to believe that somebody's going to save us rather than us pulling ourselves up by our whatever and save ourselves. I didn't want to say bootstraps, but save our fucking selves. And that's why I just don't believe in Q. But Chuck, do me a favor, hit me up at theconvocouch@gmail.com. I'd love to send you a shirt that says, it's just a fucking psyop, the Convo Couch. We love you, Chuck. We'll send you a Convo Couch shirt. Let us know your size for you and a friend, and we'd love to get that out to you, Chuck. Thank you so much for your generosity. Bam.
Thank you guys so much for watching. It's been a long show, but very much needed show. So we thank you from the bottom of our hearts for your support. And we hope to continue growing with you and learning from you as well.
That is true. You guys teach us more than anybody else. We love you all. For Pasta Jardula.
From Fiorella.
And Oz with that beautiful hair, that beautiful dandelion tee, and those wonderful overalls.
Oh, wow.
We'll see you tomorrow. We'll see you Friday.